Chapter 2866. To meet an old friend again, Zhuwen was disappointed. In Wuxia guessed that Skeleton Island, Burial Desert, and Death Hills were the places where the elusive nethersow flower would appear again. However, he had explored all of them and found nothing. Kid, perhaps the realm-eluding nethersow flower hasn't appeared in the Umbra Hell at this time. Xiao Hei's helpless voice rang out, causing Zhuwen's heart to feel heavy. Suddenly, Zhuwen saw a somewhat familiar figure looking around in a dilapidated sand dune in front of him. Then, with a whoosh, the figure drilled into the sand dune. Zhuwen narrowed his eyes. He felt that the figure was very familiar, but he couldn't put his finger on it. Follow him. Zhuwen had a very strong thought in his heart. He had to keep up with this figure. If he missed this figure, he was afraid that it would be too late for regrets. Zhuwen quietly moved to the side of the sand dune. After observing for a while, he hid behind another sand dune and observed silently. The moment Zhuwen hid on one side of the sand dune, the sneaky figure suddenly came out, looking vigilant and looking around. After confirming that no one was following it, it went back into the sand dune, and there was no movement for a long time. It's him? A trace of surprise appeared in Zhuwen's eyes when the figure reappeared. Now that he was closer, he could finally see the true face of the figure. Zhuwen had a particularly deep impression of this person's body, which was as fat as a pig's, because this fatty was Ma Yujia, who had tricked him a few times back then. After Ma Yujia was taken away from the 8 heavens by Shui Wuhen, Zhuwen had never seen this fatty again. Today, he did not expect to meet this guy in the dark underworld. Zhuwen had interacted with Ma Yujia for a period of time and knew that this fatty was an expert at finding treasures. He would never enter a place without treasures. The fatty's sneaky behavior just now was too wretched. Perhaps there was another world within this sand dune. At this moment, Zhuwen was very curious. He did not know what this Ma Yujia had found in the sand dune, but he was actually so cautious. This was the first time he had seen this fatty show such a cautious expression. After waiting for a while, Zhuwen noticed that there was no movement from the sand dune for a long time. He quietly approached the sand dune. The surface of this sand dune wasn't much different from the other sand dunes. However, Zhuwen could see that the surface of this sand dune was flashing with the brilliance of a restriction. He knew that the surface of this sand dune should be covered with an illusion array. Moreover, the level of this illusion array was not low. Zhuwen did not dare to be careless. He summoned the array flags and began to break the illusion array. Although Zhuwen's array Dao level was only at the peak of the eternal grade, his understanding had reached the 3rd step of Dao confirming. After all, he had comprehended the true pill array record and passed the 12th floor of the pill array pagoda. In addition, Zhuwen had mastered the profound Hongmeng Everlasting, which had the magical effect of destroying all laws. It could break array formations and restrictions that were one level higher than his array Dao level. The illusion array that Ma Yujia had set up on this sand dune was indeed of a very high level. Zhuwen estimated that it had reached the Genesis grade. This shocked Zhuwen. Before Ma Yujia left the 8 heavens, his array Dao level was only a level 9 God array Dao master. It had only been a short while, yet he was already a god of creation stage, formation Dao divine master. This rate of improvement was a little too terrifying. Zhuwen used the Hongmeng Everlasting and spent about an hour to break open a gap in the illusion array that was just big enough for one person to pass through. After he entered the gap, the illusion array returned to its original state. What appeared in front of Zhuwen was not the sand dune from before, but a bottomless pit. This pit was really deep, and the strong wind that came from the depths was extremely cold. Zhuwen's body trembled, and he could not help but feel a deep chill. Zhuowen frowned slightly. He released his spiritual consciousness and found that it was useless in this pit. I'll trust this fatty this once. Zhuowen gritted his teeth and drilled into the pit. However, the moment he entered the pit, he found that something was wrong. The moment he stepped out, the depths of the pit seemed to have a mind of their own. A strong wind pressure swept out and firmly sucked Zhuowen into the depths of the pit. This wind pressure was so strong that Zhuowen could not help it even if he urged all the strength in his body. Zhuowen now felt the same panic he felt when he fell from a tall building when he was still immortal. But soon, Zhuowen calmed down. He adjusted his falling posture and paid attention to the surrounding environment. He believed that his Pangu's sacred body would not be smashed into a meat patty even if he fell from a high altitude. Of course, with his current strong recovery ability, he was not afraid of falling into a meat patty. He could completely recover in a short time. Bang! Soon, Zhuowen's feet landed on the ground, and then there was a terrible explosion. Zhuowen's feet were directly bent, and his flesh and blood were squeezed into a bloody foam. His legs were directly disabled. This disability spread to Zhuowen's abdomen. It looked like the lower half of Zhuowen's body was completely broken and turned into a bloody foam. Zhuowen's face was pale, and his forehead was covered in cold sweat. However, his strong recovery ability made his bloody lower body gradually recover, and his legs gradually grew. Zhuowen rested for more than 2 hours. When his legs completely recovered, he slowly stood up and looked around. He was surrounded by cold rock walls, and in front of him was an endless tunnel. He did not know where it led to. Zhuowen breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, there was no other danger in the place where he fell. Otherwise, with his serious injury, his life would have been in danger. Zhuowen's eyes were sharp. He noticed that on the other side, he saw a human-shaped bloodstain. He was speechless for a while. He could imagine that Ma Yujie, who was one step ahead of him, had suffered a great loss. He fell to the ground and was not much better than him. However, what made Zhuowen serious was that Ma Yujie had left this place before him. In other words, Ma Yujie had also quickly recovered and continued to move forward. Zhuowen could recover so quickly thanks to his Pangu's sacred body. However, it was impossible for Ma Yujie to cultivate the Pangu's sacred body, but this guy could recover so quickly. Zhuowen knew that Ma Yujie definitely had a big secret. Zhuowen recalled the first time he met Ma Yujie. He seemed to have never seen through this guy. He really did not know where this guy came from. Zhuowen did not think too much and walked toward the depths of the tunnel. He was not fast or slow, and he was very vigilant. According to his past experience, the places that Ma Yujie entered were indeed places of treasure, but at the same time, they were also very dangerous places. It was not the first time that he had followed Ma Yujie. He knew very well about this guy's character. Along the way, Zhuowen did not encounter any danger. He was very calm. Chapter 28:67. Double Dragon Formation. In front of this ancient building stood a huge hollow door. This door was similar to the southern heavenly gate in China's ancient myths and legends. Although it was very dilapidated, he could still vaguely see the magnificent and majestic aura of the gate in the past. It was a pity that it was too badly damaged. When Zhuowen's gaze passed through the door and came to rest on the ancient buildings, he couldn't help but gulp, and his eyes burned with shock. Among the ancient buildings, he saw an ancient medicinal field. Medicinal qi was dense in this medicinal field, and it took the form of numerous rare and exotic beasts. It was a magnificent sight to behold. Other than the ancient medicine field, Zhuowen also saw a sword tomb on the other side. The ancient sword inside looked very broken, but it faintly revealed a brilliance. At first glance, One could tell that this ancient sword had an extraordinary origin. Its power was peerless, and it was not an ordinary divine sword. As for the sword spirits of the 3 divine swords on Zhuowen's back, they roared in Zhuowen's mind and threatened to go to the sword tomb to cultivate. The divine swords in the sword tomb were the best materials for their cultivation. No wonder they were so excited, like hungry wolves seeing delicious meat. In addition, Zhuowen also saw piles of special grade, heavenly Tao origin crystals scattered around the ancient building like ordinary stones. Realm, elusive underworld, soul flower. Zhuowen's eyes fell on a corner of the ruins. There was a strangely shaped god flower growing there. On the stamen of the flower, there were faces of souls. It was as if this god flower had grown from hell. Zhuowen felt excited in his heart. He never thought that following Ma Yujie to these ruins would actually allow him to see the realm-eluding underworld soul flower that he yearned for in his dreams. Who is it? At this moment, Ma Yujie was focused on breaking the restriction formation outside the door. Suddenly, he stopped what he was doing and looked at the tunnel exit with an unfriendly gaze. Zhuowen had a bad feeling in his heart. He could feel Ma Yujie's aura locking onto him. Just now, he was too excited when he saw the realm-eluding underworld soul flower. Therefore, he didn't stabilize his mind and allowed Ma Yujie to sense it. Still not coming out. Ma Yujie's voice was very cold, containing a sharp killing intent. Brother Ma, what a coincidence. I didn't expect to meet you here. Zhuowen had no choice but to walk out of the tunnel and meet Ma Yujie's eyes. Ma Yujie stared blankly at Zhuowen, then flew into a rage and said, "Who are you? Why are you calling me Brother Ma? Do we know each other very well?" Zhuowen was a little confused, but he quickly remembered that he had changed his appearance. He immediately removed his disguise and returned to his original appearance. "Brother Ma, don't you recognize me?" Zhuowen said indifferently. Ma Yujie's eyes widened as he said speechlessly, "Zhuowen, it's you again. Why do I always run into you whenever I find something good? I'm warning you, I was the one who discovered this place. If you dare to take a share of the loot, I'll definitely beat you up so badly that even your mother won't be able to recognize you." Ma Yujie took a few steps back, and the speechless expression on his face became even more pronounced. He felt like he had encountered 8 lifetimes of bad luck. Every time he encountered something good, he would run into this Zhuowen. Who had he offended? "Brother Ma, if I'm not mistaken, the restriction on the door of this ancient building should be the Twin Dragon Infernal Formation, right? You won't be able to break this formation by yourself." Zhuowen glanced behind Ma Yujie and saw through the actual situation of this grand array at a glance. The Twin Dragon Infernal Formation was a God of Creation pinnacle stage killing formation. Its power was definitely one of the strongest among all God of Creation stage killing formations. Moreover, the method to break this Twin Dragon Infernal Formation was very strict. It required the cooperation of 2 divine formation masters. Otherwise, even if one divine formation master's formation skills reached the level of the omnipotent master, they still wouldn't be able to break this formation. Ma Yujie gritted his teeth and said, "Do you think I don't know the actual situation of this formation? If you want to break this formation, you need 2 divine formation masters whose formation skills have reached the God of Creation stage or above. My formation skills have already reached the God of Creation stage, but what about you? I don't believe that your formation skills have also reached the God of Creation stage." Ma Yujie stuck out his big belly and looked at Zhuowen from the corner of his eyes. His disdain was especially strong. Zhuowen smiled and said, "Brother Ma, although my formation skills haven't reached the God of Creation stage, I'm already at the peak of the Eternal Overlord stage. Moreover, I have a secret technique that can break God of Creation stage formations." Ma Yujia's face stiffened as he looked at Zhuowen in disbelief. He kept sizing him up as if he was looking at a monster. How long has it been? Your formation skills have already reached the peak of the Eternal Overlord stage. Are you a freak? Ma Yujia didn't quite believe it. Whether it works or not, we'll know once we work together to break this twin dragon infernal formation. If I can't break it, I'll automatically withdraw, and you can do whatever you want here. However, if I help you break it, I have to make it clear in advance that we'll split the loot 50-50. That's fair enough, right? Zhuowen said calmly. Ma Yujia flatly denied it. You wish. Do you know how much I suffered in order to find these ruins? You just followed me here to break a formation, and you want to split the loot? You're dreaming. Zhuowen was neither hurried nor slow as he smiled faintly and said, Since Brother Ma doesn't agree with this method of distribution, then forget it. I'll take my leave. If any bad rumors spread outside, then Brother Ma shouldn't suspect me. I'm an open and above-board person. I definitely won't reveal the secrets of this place. Ma Yujia's face was terrifyingly gloomy. He secretly cursed Zhuowen for actually threatening him. Brother Zhua, I believe that you're an open and above-board person, but you also know that I, Ma Yujia, am a meticulous person. These ancient ruins are extraordinary. I'm actually more willing to believe the dead. Ma Yujia grinned, and an extremely terrifying aura erupted from his body. The killing intent in his eyes was undisguised. Boom! Ma Yujia's right foot suddenly stomped on the air, and the entire space collapsed. Ma Yujia's fat body was like a meatball, and he suddenly shot forward. Because his speed was too fast, an extremely terrifying explosion erupted in the air. Wherever Ma Yujia's body passed, the space collapsed, forming a terrifying black hole. Zhuowen's face changed slightly. Ma Yujia's speed was unbelievably fast. To Zhuowen's horror, Ma Yujia's fleshly body had to endure a terrifying amount of pressure while moving at such a terrifying speed. The fleshly body of the average cultivator would only be able to endure for a few breaths worth of time before being torn apart. However, Ma Yujia was not injured at all, and his speed was even increasing. Zhuowen didn't dare to be careless. He put his palms together, and his body emitted a sparkling light. Chapter 2868. Breaking the Formation Together Rumble. Zhuowen crossed his hands and blasted them out. With the power of the 5-star Pangu's sacred body, he performed the tyrannical art of slaughtering Tao. His hands turned into 2 peerlessly sharp blades and slammed onto Ma Yujia's body. Puff! Zhuowen spat out a mouthful of blood and retreated. His hands were bent at an irregular angle. Blood spurted out, and his bones were broken. Flesh and blood protruded out. It was a horrifying sight. On the other hand, Ma Yujia let out a blood-curdling scream. His chubby body was directly ejected out like a meatball. He flew out and directly smashed onto the ground. From his chest to his back, a bloody hole appeared. He had been directly penetrated. Ma Yujia rolled on the ground and lay on his back. His round face was filled with pain. Isn't your clone King Devourer? How can King Devourer's body be so terrifying? Ma Yujia asked in a trembling voice. Zhuowen also grimaced in shock. How could Ma Yujia's body be so freakish? He was not at a disadvantage when he clashed head-on with his body. He cultivated the Pangu's sacred body, which could be said to be the strongest body in this starry sky. What kind of body do you have? How can it be so strong? Zhuowen asked coldly. His hands glowed with crystal light, and the terrifying injuries on his hands began to heal. Ma Yujia was dumbfounded. Zhuowen's physical body was recovering a little too quickly. This was simply too unconventional. Ma Yujie gritted his teeth and took out a green paste from his spiritual ring. He applied it on his chest. Miraculously, the terrifying injuries on Ma Yujie's chest were healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Zhuowen and Ma Yujie stood facing each other from a distance. When both of their injuries were completely healed, they stopped fighting and stared at each other. Brother Zhua, you've changed after 3 days. As your brother, I'm really happy that you've achieved what you have today. Ma Yujie laughed heartily and gave Zhuowen a bear hug. It was as if nothing had happened when Ma Yujie tried to kill Zhuowen. Zhuowen also laughed hypocritically. He gave Ma Yujie a bear hug and said, Brother Ma, you're the same. You're really talented. It hasn't been long, but your strength is already so strong. It's really surprising. Xiao He crossed her little paws in front of her chest and looked speechlessly at the two guys who were hugging each other. She muttered, These two hypocrites, I really can't stand it anymore. Brother Zhua, you and I are brothers. As your brother, I won't let you suffer a loss. How about this? Let's split the items in this ancient ruin 30 to 70. This is the biggest compromise I can make. You should know how much effort I've put into finding this ancient ruin. Ma Yujie had a pained expression on his face, as if Zhuowen had taken advantage of him. Zhuowen still had a smile on his face. While saying that it was easy, he refused to give in on the division and insisted on a 50-50 split. The hypocritical laughter of the two guys continued to spread. The artifact spirits of the three divine swords behind Zhuowen couldn't stand it anymore. They unsheathed their swords and distanced themselves from these two hypocrites. After a while of bargaining, the two came to a final agreement. They decided to split the loot 40 to 60. Zhuowen would get 40% and Ma Yujie would get 60%. Now that the division of loot had been completely settled, Zhuowen and Ma Yujie became even more intimate. They put their arms around each other's shoulders as if the life and death duel had never happened. Brother Zhua, the twin dragon Hellfiend array is not simple. You and I will come to the dragon head of this array and break it at the same time. Ma Yujie looked at Zhuowen with a serious gaze. He was actually still a little worried. After all, Zhuowen was only a divine, a ray master at the peak of the eternal grade. He was afraid that Zhuowen would cause some trouble when breaking the array. If that happened, he would be in trouble. Brother Ma, don't worry. Zhuowen chuckled and came to the upper left corner of the gate. He formed a seal with his right hand and blasted it out. Suddenly, invisible ripples spread out. The invisible force at the upper left corner of the gate suddenly rose like a violent storm, and a huge dragon had appeared in midair. Roar! The dragon had roared fiercely, as if it was very angry, and rushed towards Zhuowen. Ma Yujie was relieved when he saw that Zhuowen had easily found the position of the dragon head. He rushed to the other side of the gate and pointed his finger, activating another dragon head. Zhuowen kept forming seals with both hands. At the same time, he used the power of the infinity primordial chaos. Powerful restriction fluctuations spread out from his hands. Although the dragon head manifested by the twin dragon Hellfiend array was terrifying, it could only roar under the suppression of Zhuowen's infinity primordial chaos. It was extremely passive. Break! Zhuowen's eyes were cold, and he pointed his finger, activating the power of the infinity primordial chaos to the extreme. He fiercely pointed his finger between the dragon head's eyebrows, and powerful energy poured into the dragon head. Roar! The dragon head screamed in pain and quickly dissipated. At the same time that Zhuowen dealt with this dragon head, Ma Yujie's side was also quickly completed. The collapse of the two dragon heads caused the restriction on the gate to gradually dim. Brother Zhua, I really didn't misjudge you. Although your formation skills haven't reached the Genesis tier, I have to admit that your formation skills are impressive, Ma Yujie said excitedly. Let's go in. You said that we'll split the things here 40 to 60. You can't go back on your word, Zhuowen said solemnly. Ma Yujie's expression was ugly, but he could only nod. After all, he had already discussed this beforehand. Moreover, Zhuowen's strength was not inferior to his at all. He couldn't kill him to silence him, so he could only obediently split the spoils with Zhuowen. The two of them first arrived at the ancient herb field, and their eyes instantly became bloodshot when they saw the numerous translucent godly medicines in the field. This was because they discovered that there were more than 80 godly medicines in the field, and all of them were Genesis tier godly medicines. Aside from that, there were 5 godly medicines standing in the center of the field, exuding an extremely terrifying medicinal aura. These 5 godly medicines were far more powerful than the godly medicines in the surroundings, and their medicinal effects were also more powerful. These are creation tier godly medicines, Ma Yujie said with bloodshot eyes. I want 3 of these 5 godly medicines, Ma Yujie said as he rushed toward the center of the herb field. Zhuowen was not to be outdone, and he followed closely behind. However, he immediately felt a terrifying pressure acting on his body the instant he entered the herb field. Roar, roar, roar. The terrifying medicinal effects above the herb field manifested numerous mutant beasts, and they all roared as they charged toward Zhuowen and Ma Yujie in a frenzy. They unleashed terrifying attacks in an attempt to annihilate these 2 intruders. One had to admit that these mutant beasts were quite a big obstacle for Zhuowen and Ma Yujie. There were over 80 God of Creation stage divine medicines and 5 Creation stage divine medicines, and the medicinal power contained within them was extremely terrifying. The 2 of them hadn't even approached the center of the herb field, and many terrifying wounds had already appeared on their bodies. Blood splattered everywhere, and they were in an extremely wretched state. Chapter 28:69. Plundering the 2 of them finally arrived at the center of the medicinal herb field after a series of twists and turns. Ma Yujie waved his hand and actually intended to envelop all 5 creation divine medicines within it. Zhuowen's eyes were sharp, and he had already noticed Ma Yujie's movements. He snorted coldly and struck out with his right hand, causing Ma Yujie's hand to deviate. Ma Yujie was very thick-skinned, and he merely chuckled. Then he changed the direction of his hand and collected 3 stalks of creation-grade divine herbs. Zhuowen didn't bicker with Ma Yujie. Instead, he collected the remaining 2 stalks of creation-grade divine herbs and began to harvest the other Genesis-grade divine herbs in the herb field. Ma Yujie's speed was even faster than Zhuowen's. In the instant that Zhuowen was harvesting the divine herbs, he also joined in the harvesting team. His movements were much faster than Zhuowen's. In a short while, all the divine herbs in the ancient herb field were collected by the 2 of them. Of course, Ma Yujie was also a man of his word. He split these Genesis tier divine medicines 40 to 60% with Zhuowen. Zhuowen obtained more than 30 Genesis grade divine herbs, and he was very satisfied. He knew that with these 30 Genesis grade divine herbs, he could continue to refine Genesis grade divine pills. He was very confident that he could raise his alchemy level to the Genesis grade. Brother Ma, in this ancient ruin, I only want the elusive underworld soul flower and the ancient sword tomb. I'll give the rest to you. What do you think of this distribution? Zhuowen suddenly said. Ma Yujie's gaze was already fixed on the ancient sword tomb. Now that he heard Zhuowen's words, he originally wanted to refuse. However, after thinking about it, he nodded and agreed. Elusive underworld soul flower, isn't that a creation-grade divine herb? Moreover, I've heard of this divine herb. Its effects are very weak. What do you want this divine herb for? Ma Yuji asked as he looked at Zhuowen in surprise. This is my personal matter. Brother Ma, you don't have to worry about it. I see that this ancient ruin is very big. I only want this sword tomb and the elusive underworld soul flower. I won't fight with you for the other things inside. Zhuowen said seriously. His objective in coming to the Umbra Hell was for the realm-fleeing underworld soul flower. Now that he had already found the realm-eluding underworld soul flower, Zhuowen naturally did not intend to stay here for long. Furthermore, he had felt a sense of unease since the beginning. Ma Yujia grinned and patted Zhuowen's shoulder. You're really my good brother. The origin of this relic is extraordinary. You're really bold to give it up just like that. Brother, I won't chat with you anymore. I'll go in and see if there's anything good. When I come out, I'll talk to you again. As he spoke, Ma Yujia impatiently entered the depths of the ruins. His laughter was extremely sharp and ear-piercing. Xiaohei, I'll leave the sword tomb to you guys. I'm going to pick the elusive realm underworld soul flower. Zhuowen said. The 3 divine swords on his back were all unsheathed and rushed toward the sword tomb, not far away. The elusive realm underworld soul flower grew in a rather remote crevice between rocks. The pitch-black petals were constantly swaying, revealing faces that looked like vengeful spirits. It looked extremely strange. Zhuowen approached and heard the ear-piercing roar. He frowned slightly. This elusive realm underworld soul flower was really strange. The roar actually had the effect of shaking his soul. Just now, when he came into contact with the roar, his soul shook unsteadily and faintly felt a stabbing pain. Fortunately, Zhuowen's soul was much stronger than an ordinary cultivator's. After the initial discomfort, he gradually adapted. Zhuowen carefully observed the elusive realm underworld soul flower in front of him. His eyes flickered. With a stroke of his right hand, he kept the elusive realm underworld soul flower into his macro world. At the same time, he set up layers of powerful restrictive arrays around the elusive nether cell flower to prevent the elusive nether cell flower's aura from leaking out and being discovered by the 10 ultimate Corps sex spies in the Umbra Hell. After doing all this, Zhuowen returned to the vicinity of the sword tomb. He was somewhat speechless to find that the 3 divine swords were already trapped in the sword tomb. There were a considerable number of divine swords inserted in the sword tomb. Each of them shone with a powerful aura. The divine swords inside were definitely not ordinary divine swords. However, the sword tomb had been set up with a powerful trapping formation. Once someone entered the sword tomb, they would immediately trigger the trapping formation in the sword tomb. The 3 divine swords did not know that there was such a powerful trapping formation in the sword tomb, so they entered the sword tomb leisurely. They did not expect to trigger the trapping formation and be trapped inside. Boy, hurry up and get us out of here. I don't know which bastard set up such a powerful trapping formation in the sword tomb. Xiaohei cursed and urged Zhuowen to release them. Zhuowen nodded and set up array flags. Terrifying array Dao power spread out. Combined with the profound meaning of Hongmeng Wuji, he easily broke the trapping formation in the sword tomb. The trapping formation in the sword tomb was only at the Genesis level. Moreover, it was very old. Therefore, it was not difficult for Zhuowen to break the trapping formation. Xiaohei, how long will it take for you to cultivate with the help of the divine swords in the sword tomb? Zhuowen looked at the 3 divine swords that had escaped from the trapping formation and asked. Xiaohei was very excited and said with bright eyes, "This sword tomb is really a treasure trove. The quality of the divine swords inside is very high. The benefits for our cultivation are really great. With this sword tomb, I have no problem breaking through to the eternal level. Little Shui and little G also have a chance to break through to the eternal level. It will take at least 3 months to half a year. After all, we also need time to digest. Zhuowen was speechless and said, "That's too long. How about this? I'll move the sword tomb into the great world. You guys can cultivate slowly inside. I'll be leaving soon." The 3 divine swords had no objections. Therefore, Zhuowen dug out the sword tomb and moved it into the great world. After doing this, Zhuowen was about to leave the ruins when he felt a faint vibration under his feet. Moreover, the vibration was getting stronger and stronger, like a sudden tsunami. It was very sudden. Then, Zhuowen saw a round figure in the depths of the ruins. It was fleeing from the depths in a very sorry state. "Ma Yujie?" Zhuowen's eyes were sharp and naturally recognized the round figure's identity. But soon, Zhuowen's expression changed drastically because he saw a black swarm of insects behind Ma Yujie. The black insects were about half the size of a palm. They looked a bit like beetles, but they were not beetles. Moreover, when the black insects walked, they spewed black poisonous gas from time to time, rising like clouds. The toxicity of this poisonous gas was very terrifying. After coming into contact with it, an extremely tragic collapse occurred. Chapter 2870. Leave. Damn it, what did this fatty do in the ruins? Zhuowen's pupils shrank, and without thinking, he ran away. There were simply too many of these black bugs. Furthermore, the poisonous gas they emitted was extremely terrifying. If there were only a few of them, Zhuowen would not be afraid. However, with so many of them, Zhuowen would not be able to handle them. Moreover, this was Ma Yujie's fault, and Zhuowen wasn't going to take the blame. Sigh, Brother Zhua. Ma Yujie, who was running away from behind, saw Zhuowen running away so quickly, and his face turned ugly. He had indeed seen many rare treasures in the depths of the ancient ruins. With Ma Yujie's temperament, he would naturally plunder any rare treasures he saw without any scruples. However, Ma Yujie's luck was very bad, and he accidentally encountered a forbidden array in the depths of the ancient ruins, which released these terrifying black bugs. With Ma Yujie's strength, he naturally wasn't afraid of ordinary bugs, but these bugs were too strange, and the poisonous gas they emitted was too much for Ma Yujie to handle. Zhuowen pretended not to hear Ma Yujie's call, and his speed was indeed faster. After a while, Zhuowen left the area of the ancient ruins passageway and reappeared on the sand dune he was at before. Brother Zhua, you're too unkind. How could you just leave me in the lurch? Ma Yujie was panting, and after a while he appeared beside the sand dune and directly lay on the ground, panting heavily without any grace. Zhuowen knew that this guy was pretending. With their cultivation, how could he be so tired after running such a long distance? Brother Ma, you might have misunderstood. I wanted to leave all the good things in the ancient ruins to you, and I didn't want to disturb you, so I left in a hurry. But before I left, I seemed to have vaguely seen something surging out from the depths of the ruins. Why is that thing gone now? Zhuowen put on an act. Ma Yujie despised Zhuowen's pretense, but he patiently explained, that thing should be the guardian of the ancient ruins. It has some restrictions and can't leave the ancient ruins. After I escaped from the ancient ruins, those insects stopped at the gate and didn't dare come out. Zhuowen nodded, then suddenly said meaningfully, Brother Ma, you should also know about the underworld hell. I'm afraid it won't be easy for you to bring the things you obtained here out. Ma Yujie chuckled. Of course I know about this, but before I entered the underworld, I had already obtained a position as a patrolling soldier. I won't be targeted once I leave the underworld. But Brother Zhua, you... At this point, Ma Yujie's smile grew even wider. He wanted to see Zhuowen make a fool of himself. His smile was very subtle. What a coincidence. Brother Ma, I also obtained a position as a patrolling soldier. Zhuowen said indifferently. Ma Yujie was startled. Disappointment flashed in his eyes, but he quickly regained his composure and said, "It is indeed a coincidence. Since Brother Zhua and I are both patrolling soldiers, then we can travel together and leave the underworld hell. Now that we are on the same side, we must help each other. Otherwise, it will be troublesome to leave the 10 Extremes Incorp sect." Zhuowen's eyes flashed. He knew that Ma Yujie's intelligence network was very strong. He knew much more than him. Brother Ma, there is no need for that. I think it is a rare opportunity for you to come to the underworld hell. There are too many good things inside. You should stay for a while. Because I have obtained what I wanted, I will not stay for long. Zhuowen smiled insincerely. He had Yin Wuxie to take care of him outside. It was not too difficult to leave the 10 Extremes Incorp sect. Naturally, he did not want to go out with Ma Yujie. Otherwise, one more person would mean one more layer of risk. Ma Yujie saw Zhuowen's strange expression, and his eyes darted around. He laughed and said, "Brother Zhua, you are wrong. I have also obtained what I wanted. I do not want to stay here for long. It is fate that we met. Since we met, we naturally cannot part like this. Let's go out together and find a restaurant to catch up. I will treat you to a meal. How about it?" Ma Yujie patted his chest and was very forthright. However, Zhuowen cursed in his heart. This Ma Yujie was entangled with him. He actually decided to follow him at this time. Although Zhuowen wanted to send Ma Yujie away, Ma Yujie was too friendly. He put his arm around Zhuowen's shoulder as if they had been old friends for many years. Zhuowen was helpless. Although this Ma Yujie could be very deceitful at times, he was not a bad person. When interacting with him, he always kept things straight and would not play dirty. Moreover, this Ma Yujie's strength was indeed strong. If something unexpected happened in the 10 Extremes Incorp sect, he could borrow Ma Yujie's strength. Thinking of this, Zhuowen no longer objected to Ma Yujie joining them. Because the two of them were patrolling soldiers, they could not directly leave through the exit of the Yin underworld. They needed the withered old man who had brought them in before to lead them back into the 10 Extremes Incorp sect. Zhuowen and Ma Yujie took out their patrolling soldier tokens and sent a message. After waiting for a while, the stone wall opened, and a withered old man walked out. "The two of you have just entered the Yin underworld, and you are already planning to leave?" The withered old man looked at Zhuowen and Ma Yujie in surprise. "Hee, Elder Shi, we found something good in there. Aren't we rushing to the contribution hall to exchange for points?" Ma Yujie said enthusiastically. The withered old man looked at Ma Yujie and said, "What good thing is it that you are rushing to exchange for points? There are rules for patrolling soldiers. I can't say these things. I think Elder Shi knows better than me." Ma Yujie stuffed a storage ring into the withered old man's hands and smiled. The withered old man casually checked it and smiled. He put away the ring and said, "Of course I know the rules. You guys can go now." With a smile on his face, Ma Yujie led Zhuowen into the tunnel within the rock wall. After leaving the Yin underworld, Ma Yujie suddenly looked at Zhuowen and said, "Brother Zhua, where should we go next?" Zhuowen was speechless. It seemed that this Ma Yujie was really riding on his coattails, thinking that he had a convenient way to leave the Incorp sect. "Right now, we need to find a person. This person is the 9th elder of the Incorp sect, Yin Wuxie. He can take us out of the Incorp sect," Zhuowen said calmly. "So you got in through connections. If you had the help of the elders of the Incorp sect, it would be easy for you to leave. Brother Zhua, you are really thoughtful. You are indeed a good brother of mine. Ma Yujie. Ma Yujie was very thick-skinned. He directly called Zhuowen brother, as if they were very close. Zhuowen was too lazy to pay attention to Ma Yujie. He walked straight to Yin Wuxie's cave. He had a bad feeling in his heart. With his personality, if Ma Yujie followed him, he would naturally ask for a reward. But he didn't. Chapter 2871. Entrusted Zhuowen arrived in front of Yin Wuxie's cave abode. After sending a message to Yin Wuxie, he waited for a while. However, Zhuowen quickly realized that something was wrong, because he realized that Yin Wuxie had not replied to him. Ma Yujie also saw Zhuowen's awkwardness and hurriedly said, "Brother Zhuowen, could it be that Elder Yin is plotting against you? If it is, let's leave quickly. We can't stay here for long. Let's wait and see," Zhuowen said with a frown. After waiting for a while, there was still no movement from Yin Wuxie's cave abode. Zhuowen and Ma Yujie both felt that something was wrong. "Junior brother Shaowen, why are you here?" Suddenly, a low voice sounded. Zhuowen turned his head and saw a woman in a red dress walking over from behind. This woman was no stranger to Zhuowen. It was Qiu Linglong, who had gone to the Blue Moon Lake with him. "Senior Sister Qiu, is Master not in the cave abode?" Zhuowen asked. Qiu Linglong's pretty face changed slightly. She hurriedly pulled Zhuowen's arm and pulled him to the side. She whispered, "Junior brother Shaowen, where have you been all this time? Didn't you hear that Master was locked up?" "What?" Zhuowen's face changed slightly. Ma Yujie, who was not far away, was speechless. He originally thought that Zhuowen had found a reliable backdoor entry. Now, he realized that this backdoor entry was not reliable at all and was actually locked up. "Junior brother Shaowen, this is not a place to stay for long. Come with me. I'll bring you to a safe place," Qiu Linglong said rather anxiously. Zhuowen nodded. Naturally, he had no objections. At the same time, he looked at Ma Yujie and said, "Brother Ma, do you want to come with me?" Ma Yujie was extremely speechless. He said, "I've already boarded your pirate ship. I can only follow you. It's really impossible for me to leave the 10 Extremes Yin Corps sect now." Qiu Linglong brought Zhuowen and Ma Yujie back to the cave abode she had opened. In order to avoid meeting other disciples, Qiu Linglong basically walked to an extremely remote place. When they returned to Qiu Linglong's cave abode, the three of them let out a sigh and relaxed a lot. "Senior Sister Qiu Linglong, Junior brother Shao, when Y's master was locked up and who locked him up?" Zhuowen asked with a serious expression. Qiu Linglong Qiu Ruyu sighed and recounted the recent events that had happened. Zhuowen's Qiu Yin's Qiu. "It Qiu Studio Yu Nianin time. Yu Nian Lu. Studio of Studio Lu. Lu Studio. He knew that Sakyamuni's explanation of resurrection using the reincarnation talisman must have been a lie. Ghost Plume and Sakyamuni were naturally looking for Zhuowen, but Yin Wuxie didn't rat out Zhuowen. Moreover, Yin Wuxie was the 9th elder of the 10 Extremities Yin Corps sect. His status was very high, and Ghost Plume and Sakyamuni did not dare to touch Yin Wuxie. Later, Sakyamuni summoned the 4th elder, Ba Jingwei, and accused Yin Wuxie of colluding with outsiders. Yin Wuxie was severely injured and imprisoned. "Junior brother Wen, you're not Master's disciple, right? I heard from that senior brother Ghost Plume that you are called Zhuowen, a cultivator from the outside world." Qiu Linglong suddenly looked at Zhuowen. Zhuowen's heart sank, and he didn't say anything. Instead, he looked coldly at Qiu Linglong. "You're right, I'm not Elder Yin's disciple. As for my identity, Senior Sister Qiu is asking too many questions. I just want to know that Ba Jingwei is also an elder." What qualifications does he have to severely injure and imprison Eldarine? Zhuowen said, Elder Ba is the fourth elder, and also a lord of creation. Within the sect, his status is far higher than Master's. Moreover, Master did bring an outsider, which gave Elder Ba a reason to attack. Qiu Linglong sighed. Do you know where Eldarine is imprisoned? Zhuowen suddenly asked. Although Yin Wuxia had tried to kill him, he was now his servant. Moreover, he was imprisoned because of him. Zhuowen naturally couldn't ignore him. This was not his character. Junior brother Xiaowen, you want to save Master? Qiu Linglong's beautiful eyes widened in disbelief. Just tell me where Elder Yin is being held. You don't need to ask about what's going to happen next. I don't want to drag you into this right now. Otherwise, your end will be very miserable, Zhuowen said calmly. Qiu Linglong went silent, and then she passed a jade slip to Zhuowen and said, Master is imprisoned at the bottom of Blue Moon Lake. This jade slip records a strand of Master's aura. You can follow this jade slip to sense Master's specific aura. Also, the Blue Moon Lake is heavily guarded. Senior brother Ghost Plume is overseeing it. You'd better not act recklessly. Zhuowen cupped his fists. Senior Sister Qiu, don't worry. I won't act recklessly. With that, Zhuowen looked at Ma Yujia seriously. He took out the realm-eluding underworld soul flower from his outside world and handed it to Ma Yujia. Brother Ma, can you help me pass this item to the pill array Immortal Alliance's Alliance Master, Ji Wuming? This flower is related to the life of a very important friend of mine. I hope you can help me with this. In return, I'll give you this creation-grade divine herb. Zhuowen took out a creation-grade divine herb and handed it to Ma Yujia. It was one of the 2 creation-grade divine herbs he had obtained from the ancient ruins. Ma Yujia was very surprised. He didn't expect that Zhuowen would be willing to take out a creation-grade divine herb for him to bring the realm-eluding underworld soul flower back to the Pill Array Immortal Alliance. This matter was too simple for him. Brother Zhuo's kindness is hard to refuse. I won't be polite. Ma Yujia did not stand on ceremony, as he kept the stalk of fortune-grade spirit herb. At the same time, he also kept the realm-fleeing underworld soul flower. Seeing the reward of this fortune-grade spirit herb, Ma Yujia decided to help Zhuo win this time. This is the map of the Pill Array Immortal Alliance's location. Brother Ma, take it and have a good look. Zhuowen took out a jade slip and handed it to Ma Yujia. Ma Yujia felt a little complicated and said, Brother Zhuo, are you really planning to save that Yin Wuxia? I remember that Yin Wuxia's relationship with you isn't that good, right? Elder Yin was captured because of me. I have a certain degree of responsibility, so I have no choice but to take care of this matter. Otherwise, if I ignore Elder Yin, I might feel uneasy in the future, Zhuowen said calmly. Ma Yujia looked deeply at Zhuowen, then cupped his fists and said, If that's the case, then I'll take my leave first. If I delay any longer, the contribution hall will realize that something is wrong. They'll quickly find the aura of the treasures on our bodies. At that time, I won't be able to leave. Brother Zhuo, don't worry. I'll definitely do what I promised you. I definitely won't cheat. Chapter 2872. Yin Ma Yujia was not worried about Ma Yujia. He knew that this fellow had made ample preparations when he decided to enter the Yin underworld. Based on Zhuowen's understanding of Ma Yujia, the latter must have his own secret passage to leave the Yin Corp sect. When he thought up to here, Zhuowen muttered with slight shame, Brother Ma, looks like I have to ask you to be my shield this time. A creation-grade divine herb ought to be sufficient to make it up to you. Senior brother Zhuowen, what are you talking about? Qiu Linglong looked at the muttering Zhuowen in confusion. Ever since Zhuowen told Qiu Linglong his name. She no longer called him junior brother Xiao Wan. Instead, she called him senior brother Zhua. Nothing, junior sister Qiu. I might have to stay in your cave for a few days. After I rescue Elder Yin, I'll leave. I won't be a burden to you, Zhuowen said with a smile. Qiu Linglong nodded, but did not say anything. Her eyes flashed with helplessness. In fact, she had tried to persuade Zhuowen to leave the Yin Corpse sect. Yin Wuxia was imprisoned in the Blue Moon Lake, where Ghost Plume was. It was heavily guarded. Even a creator would not be able to leave the Blue Moon Lake. Unfortunately, Zhuowen did not listen to her advice. She also knew that it was useless to try to persuade him. At the entrance of the Yin Corpse sect, there were piles of bones and eerie Yin Qi. Ma Yujia's chubby figure appeared sneakily at the entrance. He looked at the guards at the entrance, but did not go over immediately. He did not care about the guards at the entrance. What he cared about was the restriction formation at the entrance. Once he touched the restriction formation at the entrance, he would immediately alert the Yin Corpse sect. At that time, the experts in the sect would be dispatched to hunt him down. Fortunately, I had the foresight to dig a shortcut here. As long as I leave the Yin Corpse sect, I'll be safe. Ma Yujia grinned and carefully came to a very remote corner. All kinds of skeletons were piled up in the corner. Black qi filled the air, adding an eerie feeling to the place. Ma Yujia didn't care about the filth of these skeletons at all. His hands continued to push these skeletons to the side. Underneath the skeleton, there was actually a small and deep tunnel. Ma Yujia looked left and right. After making sure that no one had seen him, he entered the passage. At the same time, he threw a few array flags at the entrance of the cave. The scattered bones gathered together and covered the entrance of the cave. A few 100 kilometers away from the 10 Extremes Yin Corpse sect, a hole was blasted open in the cliff wall. Ma Yujia's fat body crawled out with difficulty. Phew, this trip was unexpectedly smooth. Zhuowen is such a loyal and righteous person. He actually wants to save that Yin Wuxia. Isn't he courting death? I shouldn't say that he's courting death. This guy is definitely dead. However, he was quite honest. Before he died, he left me a creation-grade elixir and a realm-eluding underworld flower. Ma Yujia revealed a wretched smile and took out the creation-grade elixir and the realm-eluding underworld flower from his spirit ring. Like a miser, he flipped the two elixirs over and over again. However, Ma Yujia quickly realized that something was wrong. He kept the creation-grade elixir and only kept the realm-eluding underworld flower. He looked at it over and over again and even extended his divine sense to check. Ma Yujia's expression changed because he realized that the realm-eluding underworld flower was fake. Didn't this guy want to entrust the realm-eluding underworld flower to me and give it to the Pill Array Immortal Alliance to save his friend? Why did he give me a fake realm-eluding underworld flower? Ma Yujia didn't care too much about the realm-eluding underworld flower. Therefore, when he received the realm-eluding underworld flower from Zhuowen, he didn't check it carefully and didn't realize that it was a fake. However, now that he had observed it and realized that it was fake, he became even more suspicious. He didn't know if Zhuowen did it intentionally or not. If it was intentional, then the realm-eluding underworld flower that this guy took from the ancient ruins might be fake. However, if it was intentional, then the reason behind it was very thought-provoking. Suddenly, the realm-eluding underworld flower in Ma Yujia's hand surged with a blazing light. Along with the blazing light, a terrifying energy kept expanding, as if it would explode at any time. Ma Yujia's expression changed drastically, and an ominous feeling rose in his heart. Without thinking, he immediately threw the realm-eluding underworld flower away and quickly left. Boom! The realm-eluding underworld flower exploded like a bomb. Terrifying waves of air rose, forming a huge mushroom cloud. Because the explosion was simply too terrifying, and because it happened right next to the 10 Extreme Incorp sect, it immediately activated the restrictions on the surface of the 10 Extreme Incorp sect. Waves of light flowed out of the restrictions, attracting the attention of all the cultivators within the sect. Not good. Someone is causing trouble in our sect. Who is so bold to blow up our 10 Extreme Incorp sect? Is he tired of living? We must catch the culprit and let him have a taste of living a life worse than death. I will let him know the consequences of offending our 10 Extreme Incorp sect. A stone stirred up 1,000 ripples. All the cultivators in the 10 Extreme Incorp sect were enraged. Even the upper echelons of the sect were alerted. One by one, figures rushed out and rushed towards the explosion site. Zhuowen, F*CKU, you tricked me. Ma Yujie wanted to cry, but no tears came out. He finally understood why Zhuowen was so generous this time and gave him a creation-level divine medicine. It turned out that he wanted to use him as bait to lure away the experts in the 10 Extreme Incorp sect, and then this guy would take advantage of the situation. Although Ma Yujie really wanted to rush into the 10 Extreme Incorp sect and cut Zhuowen into pieces, when he saw the cultivators in the 10 Extreme Incorp sect. However, when he saw the black mass of cultivators rushing towards him from within the 10 Extreme Incorp sect, he knew that he would be courting death if he rushed in now. Zhuowen, just you wait. Next time, I will make you suffer so much that even your parents won't recognize you. Ma Yujie threw down these vicious words, took out his flying divine weapon, and quickly left the place. He knew that, if he didn't leave now, he wouldn't be able to. He could feel that the creation-level experts in the 10 Extreme Incorp sect were on the move. Although he was tough and strong, he would still be tortured badly if he went up against the creation-level experts. Above the surface of the Blue Moon Lake, Gui Ling slowly stood up in the luxurious pavilion, floating in the air. A glint flashed across his eyes. Senior Brother Ghost Plume, someone is causing trouble at our sect's entrance. I suspect that it might be Zhuowen's doing. Sakyamuni walked in from outside the pavilion, his eyes filled with excitement and cruelty. I think so too. This guy is really bold. Is he provoking the 10 Extreme Incorp sect? Ghost Plume said with a cold gaze. Hee, this fits Zhuowen's personality. This time, the commotion is too big. It has already alerted my master and 4 other elders. Senior Brother Ghost Plume, let's go. Chapter 2873. Luring the tiger from the mountain. Ghost Plume thought for a moment, then finally agreed to Sakyamuni's suggestion. He had heard from Sakyamuni about Zhuowen's background and knew that he came from one of the 8 heavenly domains. He had only been in the Xianmi heavenly domain for a few hundred years, but he was able to become an immortal master of the Pill Array Immortal Alliance, and his strength was so terrifying. He suspected that there was a huge secret on him. Although this kid is an immortal master of the Pill Array Immortal Alliance, he has to pay a price for offending the 10 Extremes Incorp sect. Today, we will capture him and let him know the price of offending the 10 Extremes Incorp sect. Ghost Plume stood up and left the Blue Moon Lake with Sakyamuni, rushing toward the sect's entrance. Inside Qiu Linglong's cave, Qiu Linglong hurriedly came in and said to Zhuowen, Senior Brother Zhua, someone is attacking the 10 Extremes Incorp sect. I don't know who is so bold. Zhuowen's gaze was calm, and he was not surprised. He said, It's that friend of mine. He holds a deep grudge against the 10 Ultimate Incorp sect, so before he left, it is very normal for him to give your sect a few blows. Qiu Linglong's beautiful eyes were filled with a strange expression. She also felt that there was something fishy, but she did not say it out loud. Senior Brother Joie, Ghost Plume of the Blue Moon Lake, has already left, and the commotion this time was too big. For elders in the sect were alarmed, and they left their secluded cultivation to chase after the troublemaker. Your friend will be fine, right? Qiu Linglong's beautiful eyes were filled with worry. She felt that Ma Yujia's life was in danger. Zhuowen did not care, and he waved his hand to reassure Qiu Linglong. Ma Yujia had countless trump cards, and this guy was not simple. His ability to escape was even better than his. Although the 10 Extremes Yin Corp sect was powerful, as long as the sect master, Senki Yin, did not appear, he felt that Ma Yujia would be fine. At most, he would be chased until he was exhausted. Moreover, Zhuowen had already found out from Qiu Linglong that the sect leader of the 10 Extremities Yin Corp sect, Senki Yin, was currently not in the sect. Instead, he was a guest at the Scarlet Mountain Villa. No matter how big the commotion was, Senki Yin would not appear. Junior Qiu, I'm going to the Blue Moon Lake. It's best if you don't tell anyone about me. Otherwise, you might be implicated. Zhuowen cupped his fists at Qiu Linglong and left the cave. Qiu Linglong's beautiful eyes flashed with a complicated look. She didn't go out to send them off. She could only help up to this point and didn't dare to have too much contact with Zhuowen. If not, she might be in danger as well. After leaving Qiu Linglong's cave, Zhuowen headed straight for the Blue Moon Lake. The 10 Extremities Yin Corp sect's territory was very large. During the time he was in Qiu Linglong's cave, he had studied the internal geography of the 10 Extremities Yin Corp sect. He knew that the cave residences of the 10 Extremities Yin Corp sect's upper echelons were basically far apart. For example, the Blue Moon Lake where Ghost Plume resided was tens of thousands of kilometers away from the 4th Elder Ba Jingwei's cave residence. Even if he flew, it would take a quarter of an hour. In addition, Ba Jingwei, Ghost Plume, and many other experts in the sect were attracted by the commotion caused by Ma Yujia. Zhuowen had enough time to enter the Blue Moon Lake and rescue Yin Wuxia. Soon, Zhuowen arrived near the Blue Moon Lake. Along the way, he saw many disciples of the 10 Extremities Yin Corp sect rushing out of the sect with anger. The deeper he went into the sect, the fewer people there were. There was no one outside the huge courtyard where the Blue Moon Lake was located. Apart from the private guards belonging to Ghost Plume, this place was very secluded. The Blue Moon Lake was surrounded by the radiance of a formation restriction. Zhuowen was no stranger to this formation. When he first entered this courtyard, he had already discovered that there were 3 types of Genesis tier grand formations fused together. They were an illusion formation, a trap formation, and a killing formation. Zhuowen had already studied these 3 grand formations. Now that he was here again, Zhuowen immediately used the primordial chaos infinity to break these 3 grand formations. In less than 3 breaths of time, Zhuowen had broken the 3 grand formations one by one. The ripples of the formation being broken spread out, attracting the attention of the guards in the courtyard. Who is it? How dare you trespass into Lord Ghost Plume's Blue Moon Lake? More than a dozen cultivators rushed out. They were basically all eternal overlords. Among them, the middle-aged man in the lead was the strongest. He was a half-step Genesis tier expert. Zhuowen couldn't be bothered to talk nonsense with these people. He took a step forward, and his body emitted a crystalline light. He punched out fiercely, smashing into the nearest cultivator. You're courting death. A mere heavens will master actually dares to trespass on the Blue Moon Lake. See if I don't kill you. This cultivator was stunned. He naturally noticed that Zhuowen's aura was not strong. He was only a heavens will master. When he came back to his senses, a sinister smile appeared on his face. He raised the long saber in his hand and slashed at Zhuowen's fist. The middle-aged man and the other guards didn't make a move. They all watched this scene with cold smiles. They all wanted to see how this arrogant Heaven's Will master would be cut in half and die tragically in front of them. Bang! Zhuowen shattered the cultivator's long saber with a punch. His long fist was like a rainbow, and it landed on the cultivator's body like a hot knife through butter. A terrifying power exploded, and it was as if Mount Tai was pressing down. The cultivator screamed as his body was torn into a bloody pulp. His divine soul dissipated, and he died, just like that, in front of everyone. The middle-aged man and the group of people who were watching the show were dumbfounded. Their faces were filled with disbelief. Zhuowen didn't give them time to be stunned. After killing the cultivator with a single move, he dove into the crowd like a dragon. He executed the tyrannical Dao slaughtering technique with both hands, and his entire body turned into a killing machine as he wantonly slaughtered. None of the guards present could withstand a single punch from Zhuowen. They were all killed with a single punch. The middle-aged man was scared out of his wits. His forehead was covered in cold sweat. He roared in fear in his heart. How could he encounter such a terrifying cultivator? What kind of freak was this? He was clearly a Heaven's Will master, but killing eternal overlords like them was as easy as killing chickens. This was too terrifying. You go to hell. The moment Zhuowen killed the last cultivator with a single punch, his cold gaze fell on the middle-aged man. The latter trembled all over when he noticed Zhuowen's gaze. He hurriedly knelt and begged for mercy. More than a dozen eternal overlords had been killed so easily. Even he couldn't do it, but the young man in front of him had done it so easily. He knew he was no match for this young man, and he didn't want to die. He could only kneel and beg for mercy. I can spare your life, but I need you to do something for me. Zhuowen said coldly as he came before the middle-aged man. He didn't attack again. Sir, please speak. I'll tell you everything I know. The middle-aged man was scared out of his wits. He didn't dare to disobey Zhuowen. Where is Yin Wuxia imprisoned at Blue Moon Lake? Zhuowen asked. The middle-aged man hesitated, as if it was difficult to speak. Speak or die. Choose for yourself. Chapter 2874. Saving Yin Wuxia, the middle-aged man, felt Zhuowen's murderous intent and trembled. He quickly said, I'll talk. Elder Yin is imprisoned at the bottom of the Blue Moon Lake. That's Ghost Plume's private place. It's a forbidden area of the Blue Moon Lake. We've never been there before. You know where it is. Take me there. Zhuowen said indifferently. The middle-aged man was helpless. His life was in Zhuowen's hands, so he had to listen. Soon, the two of them dived into the Blue Moon Lake. The middle-aged man led the way while Zhuowen followed behind. Zhuowen's divine sense was firmly locked on the middle-aged man to prevent him from playing any tricks. At the bottom of the lake, the two of them stopped in front of a 3-story pagoda-like building. The surface of the building was very shabby and covered with moss. Obviously, it had been there for a long time. At the bottom of the pagoda, there was an iron fence. It was pitch black inside. Zhuowen tried to extend his divine sense into the pagoda and found that his divine sense was suppressed. There was an array in the pagoda that blocked divine sense. Boom. Zhuowen blasted the iron fence open with a punch. He didn't go in, but let the middle-aged man go in first. The middle-aged man's legs trembled. He didn't want to enter the forbidden area, but Zhuowen forced him to. He had to bite the bullet and go in. Not long after the middle-aged man went in, he suddenly screamed, and then there was no sound. Zhuowen's eyes narrowed slightly as he pondered in his heart. This pagoda was not simple. However, he did not give up because of this. Since he had already come this far. Even if this pagoda was dangerous, he would still continue to step inside and rescue Yin Wuxia. After entering the pagoda, he immediately felt a terrifying pressure. Then, purple light blades swept around him. The light blades were very dense and sharp. They were very fast. Zhuowen didn't have time to react. His whole body was enveloped by the light blades, and blood splattered everywhere. Dozens of terrible wounds appeared on Zhuowen's body, and blood kept flowing out. Zhuowen was shocked. His body was already a 5-star Pangu's sacred body, which was extremely powerful, but the light blades easily cut through his body. What kind of power was this? Before Zhuowen could come back to his senses, another wave of light blades swept out from the surrounding walls. Only then did Zhuowen notice that there were extremely complicated patterns on the surrounding rock walls. They crisscrossed and intersected with each other. The light blades were formed from these patterns. At the same time, he also noticed that there was nothing else on the first floor of the ancient pagoda other than the stairs in the corner. As for the middle-aged man, he had turned into a pile of meat and scattered to the side. Clearly, the middle-aged man had also been attacked by these light blades. However, this middle-aged man did not have Zhuowen's Pangu sacred body, so he could not resist the first wave of light blades and died there. As Zhuowen dodged the attacks from the light blades, he quickly healed his body and approached the staircase. When he reached the staircase, he immediately went up to the second floor. The light blades on the second floor were denser and more powerful. As soon as Zhuowen entered the second floor, he was immediately blasted into a bloody mist by the endless light blades. Fortunately, Zhuowen's self-healing ability was too strong. The bloody mist continued to condense. In a few breaths, Zhuowen reformed his body and quickly rushed toward the staircase to the third floor. On the second floor, Zhuowen's body was blasted into pieces more than 10 times, and he was blasted into a bloody mist every time. After paying the price of more than 10 times, Zhuowen reluctantly reached the staircase and entered the third floor with difficulty. After entering the third floor, Zhuowen let out a long breath because he found that there were no light blades on the third floor that he was afraid of. It was extremely quiet, just like an ordinary attic room. Zhuowen rested for a while before looking at the third floor. At a glance, he saw the cross in the depths of the floor where a figure was tied up. This figure was Yin Wuxia. However, at this moment, Zhuowen almost couldn't recognize Yin Wuxia. He saw that Yin Wuxia was as thin as a matchstick, like a dried-up person. The aura on his body was extremely weak, like a candle in the wind that could be extinguished at any time. At Yin Wuxia's feet, there was a black skull. This skull was only the size of a palm, and on the top of the skull there was a strange flower. On the stamen of this flower, there was a face that looked like a vengeful spirit, and it was emitting a heart-palpitating roar. The sound was like a human scream before death, and it made people shudder. Realm, elusive underworld, soul flower. Zhuowen was no stranger to the strange flower growing on the black skull. It was the realm elusive underworld soul flower that he had found in the underworld. At this moment, he realized that the jaws of the black skull beneath Yin Wuxia's feet were constantly moving up and down as though it was chewing something. The sound of bones colliding with each other gave off a creepy feeling that made one shudder in fear. Then Zhuowen realized that Yin Wuxia was screaming and the essence of his body was being sucked away by the skull. The originally skinny Yin Wuxia's eyes were about to pop out, and he looked very ferocious. Zhuowen's expression changed slightly. He felt that this skull was too strange. He suddenly punched out with his right fist, and the skull was smashed to pieces. The instant the skull shattered, a sharp, wretched cry rang out. Next, Zhuowen sensed an extremely dense essence energy spreading out in all directions. This essence was extremely pure. Zhuowen didn't even need to take the initiative to absorb it. It automatically entered his meridians and began to circulate, turning into a part of his body's strength. The moment Zhuowen breathed in the essence qi, he felt as if he was on cloud nine. It was like the feeling of an ordinary person smoking opium. It made him very fascinated, and he wanted to continue absorbing this essence and experience that happiness. Zhuowen quickly realized that something was wrong. He rolled up his sleeves and collected this essence into a jade bottle. He didn't continue to absorb it. He didn't know what it was, but he guessed that it wasn't anything good. Before he knew what it was used for, he really didn't dare to use it casually. Zhuowen took out a divine pill to recover essence and gave it to Yin Wuxia. Yin Wuxia's pale face finally eased a lot. However, Yin Wuxia had lost too much essence. He was as thin as a stick and didn't even have the strength to speak. He could only look at Zhuowen with gratitude in his eyes. Then he closed his eyes and fainted. After Zhuowen put Yin Wuxia into the outside world, he looked at the remains of the black skull under his feet. He pondered for a moment, but in the end, he put it away. He planned to bring it back to the Pill Array Immortal Alliance and ask Ji Wuming about it. There's actually an array here. Zhuowen was just about to leave the ancient pagoda when he discovered that behind the cross on the third floor, in a very remote corner, there was a very inconspicuous array. With Zhuowen's level of array Dao, it was easy for him to see that this array should be a short-distance transportation array. As for where it led to, Zhuowen didn't know. That ghost plume set up an array here. It's definitely not for fun. I'm afraid that it leads to an extremely mysterious place. Zhuowen's eyes flickered. He was considering whether to enter the transportation array or not. Let's go in and take a look. After thinking for a while, Zhuowen decided to activate the transportation array. He had a feeling that this 10 Extremes Yin Corpse sect was hiding some unspeakable secret. Chapter 2875. Dead Man's Flower. Zhuowen felt dizzy as the light flickered. When he opened his eyes, he was in a new place. This was an extremely gloomy stone room. The decorations in the stone room were very simple. Other than a stone table and a stone stool in the corner, there were no other decorations. In front of the stone room, there was an iron door. The surface of this iron door was overflowing with complicated patterns. It should have been forged from some kind of powerful or material. Zhuowen tried to attack the iron door with all his strength, but he triggered a powerful mysterious force in the iron door. His right fist was directly blasted into a bloody mist by the reaction force. He grimaced in pain, and his eyes were filled with fear. He knew that it was unrealistic to use brute force to break open this iron door. He suspected that there must be something extraordinary behind this stone door. Zhuowen did not continue to attack the iron door. Instead, he began to size up this stone room. To be more precise, he was observing the stone table in the corner. Walking behind the stone table, Zhuowen found a secret compartment behind the stone table. He opened the secret compartment and found a stack of jade slips and an iron key. Zhuowen put away the iron key. He knew that it should be the key to the iron door. He was not in a hurry to open the iron door. Instead, he casually picked up a jade slip and flipped through the contents. His face immediately became serious and unsightly. This jade slip recorded an experiment called the Dead Man's Flower. Once this flower bloomed, it would have an extremely pure essence that could allow a cultivator's cultivation speed to rise to an unimaginable level. Of course, the Dead Man's Flower was a divine medicine that existed in legends. Moreover, it was an extremely insidious divine medicine. According to the records, the materials needed for the Dead Man's Flower were very simple. One of them was the realm-eluding underworld flower. The other was a living cultivator. Moreover, the stronger the cultivator, the higher the grade of the dead man's flower. The higher the grade of the dead man's flower, the faster the cultivator's cultivation would increase. It was said that the effect of a dead man's flower of the same grade was at least hundreds or thousands of times better than a cultivation pill of the same grade. After reading the contents of the jade slip, Zhuowen's face turned ugly. This dead man flower was definitely a scourge. It was actually a divine medicine that relied on stripping the essence of cultivators to cultivate. However, Zhuowen was very puzzled. In any case, he was an eternal great alchemist, yet he had never heard of this dead man flower before. According to the records, the stronger the cultivator, the stronger the dead man flower would be. Didn't this mean that if this dead man flower was planted on the body of a sky-reaching master, it would be able to bloom into a sky-reaching master flower? Fortunately, the raw material of the Deathman flower, the realm-escaping underworld soul flower, is not much. I'm afraid that the Deathman flower will not be produced in large quantities. Zhuowen shook his head and heaved a sigh of relief. He knew very well that if this dead man flower could be cultivated in large quantities, it would definitely be a disaster for cultivators. However, when he flipped open the second jade slip, his expression was very unsightly, and his eyes were filled with shock. In the second jade slip, it basically recorded the experiments of cultivating the dead man flower. The 10 Extremities Incorp sect had been conducting experiments in this area for a long time and seemed to have made a breakthrough. Zhuowen flipped through the next jade slips and found that the rest of the jade slips recorded the process of cultivating the dead man flower. Most of them were failures. Although there were successes, the survival rate of the dead man flower was not high. When Zhuowen saw the last few jade slips, he found that the experimenter had found the most direct way to cultivate the dead man flower, which was to absorb the essence of cultivators to maintain the survival of the dead man flower. Moreover, after the dead man flower absorbed enough essence, it even had the possibility of leveling up. At the same time, it could also give birth to the seeds of the dead man flower and cultivate new dead man flowers. The seeds of the dead man flower were not cultivated in the soil, but in the cultivator's body. These seeds grew by constantly absorbing the essence of the cultivator's body. It was said that the growth cycle was very short. Zhuowen put away the jade slip. He realized how terrifying this thing was. If he allowed the Incorp sect of the 10 Extremes to spread this dead man's flower, many cultivators would suffer. This was an experiment that went against human ethics. Taking out the iron key, Zhuowen opened the iron door in front of the stone room. With a clang, the iron door opened and a very narrow corridor appeared in front of Zhuowen. On both sides of the corridor were square storage cabinets. The entrance of the storage cabinets was an iron fence. Zhuowen looked through the gaps in the iron fence and found that there was a cultivator lying flat on each storage cabinet. These cultivators were pale like zombies. The strangest thing was that there was a black flower blooming on the top of their heads. This black flower was similar to the elusive underworld soul flower, but it was different. The main difference was that the yin qi contained in the black flower was much more terrifying than the elusive underworld soul flower. Dead man flower. Zhuowen's expression did not look good. He knew that these black flowers growing from the cultivators' heads were dead man flowers. Zhuowen flipped through the jade slip in the stone room and basically knew the general idea of the dead man flower. There were records in the jade slip that the elusive underworld soul flower was refined from cultivators. It was the original dead man flower. Because the elusive underworld soul flower was very rare, there were not many original dead man flowers. In the experiment, the 10 Extremities Incorp sect cultivated the dead man flower seeds from the original dead man flower. Through these cultivated seeds, They were planted into the cultivator's flesh and blood to cultivate the second-generation dead man flower. The original dead man flower was very rare, but the second-generation dead man flower was not small. As long as there were enough seeds and cultivators, there would be an endless supply of second-generation dead man flowers. Obviously, the black flowers growing from the cultivators' heads in the storage cabinets on both sides of the corridor were the second-generation dead man flowers. Zhuowen made a rough estimate and found that there were hundreds of cultivators on both sides of the corridor. In other words, there were at least hundreds of second-generation dead man flowers. Not only that, but Zhuowen also found that the cultivators whose flesh and blood energy were being devoured by the dead man flowers were not disciples of the Ten Extremities Yin Corp sect. They were disciples of other forces in the host region. Zhuowen even saw cultivators from the Scarlet Mountain Villa, Fallen Star Mountain, and other similar Dao Palace forces lying in one of the storage cabinets. Zhuowen guessed that these cultivators should be cultivators who had come to challenge the nether hell of the Ten Extremities Yin Corp sect. These cultivators might have obtained something really good in the nether hell and been discovered by the spies of the Ten Extremities Yin Corp sect. Then, the Ten Extremities Yin Corp sect sent experts to capture these cultivators and bring them here as nutrients for the dead man flower seeds. The Ten Extremities Yin Corp sect is really ruthless. They actually did such a cruel experiment. Chapter 2876. Lu Xingjian. If news of the 10 Ultimates Yin Corp sect spread, they would be attacked immediately. No faction would let go of a tumor like the 10 Ultimates Yin Corp sect. Having this thought, Zhuowen took out a recording crystal and recorded everything that had happened. After he left the 10 Ultimates Yin Corp sect, he would definitely return to the Pill Array Immortal Alliance and give this recording crystal to Ji Wuming to spread the news. Ji Wuming was the Alliance head of the Pill Array Immortal Alliance and had a high prestige in the host region. Adding on the Pill Array Immortal Alliance's status in the host region, if Ji Wuming were to spread this news, most powers would be convinced. At that time, the 10 Ultimates Yin Corp sect would be finished. However, Zhuowen was different. After all, he was alone and weak. Moreover, he was only a newly promoted Celestial Master. He did not have a strong foundation. If it were him, he might be attacked by the Yin Corp sect. After recording, Zhuowen walked deeper into the corridor. He had seen the jade slip in the stone room and knew that this was the deepest part of the 10 Ultimates Yin Corp sect. It was very secretive, and also the 10 Ultimates Yin Corp sect's biggest secret. In the 10 Ultimates Yin Corp sect, only the true upper echelons had the authority to enter this place. Zhuowen knew that Ghost Plume was in the Blue Moon Lake. Since there was a transportation array to enter this place, it was obvious that Ghost Plume had a very high status in the 10 Ultimates Yin Corp sect. He was probably not just the number one genius. According to the Jade Slip, Senki Yin cultivated a total of 9 original dead man flowers. The second-generation dead man flowers were cultivated from the seeds of these 9 original dead man flowers. Zhuowen thought as he walked deeper into the corridor. He had seen the contents of the Jade Slip and knew that the 9 original dead man flowers were hidden in the deepest part of the corridor. The second-generation dead man flowers here were cultivated from the seeds of the original dead man flowers. As long as the original dead man flowers were taken away, the 10 Ultimates Yin Corp sect would lose the source of the seeds. It would be impossible for the 10 Ultimates Yin Corp sect to cultivate a new second-generation dead man flower, unless they cultivated a new original dead man flower. Zhuowen went deeper. It had to be said that this underground space was very large. Zhuowen passed through corridor after corridor. Between the corridors, there were iron fences that contained mysterious energy. Zhuowen looked at the contents of the Jade Slip, which recorded the method to open the iron fence. Therefore, these iron fences were not much of a hindrance to Zhuowen. As Zhuowen continued to descend deeper into the underground space, the originally noisy in-corpse sect became much quieter. One figure after another returned to the sect from the outside world. Most of the cultivators had looks of unwillingness on their faces. Among this group of cultivators, there were 8 people. These 8 people all had vast auras, and their eyes were cold. It was obvious that they were people of high status. Among the 8, Ghost Plume and Sakyamuni were among them, but their expressions weren't particularly good. Apart from Ghost Plume and Sakyamuni, the remaining 6 were 6 of the 10 great elders of the In-Corpse sect. Among them was the 4th elder, Ba Jingwei, the 8th elder, Mao Xinho, the 6th elder, Fan Jiaoyang, the 7th elder, Gong Ziping, and the 10th elder, Gu Hongkai. What was most noteworthy was that all of these elders, including Ba Jingwei, were looking at one of the old men with reverence in their eyes. Even their postures were subtly following behind this old man. This old man was very famous in the In-Corpse sect, ranked above Ba Jingwei. He was the 3rd elder, Lu Xingjian. He was also a creation lord, and his strength was even greater than Ba Jingwei's. Old Ba, go and investigate that cultivator for me. Where did he come from? The few of us attacked together, but we still couldn't take him down. In the end, he escaped. Lu Xingjian's expression was ugly. He looked sternly at Ba Jingwei behind him and said coldly. Ba Jingwei lowered his head and hurriedly complied. He didn't dare to disobey Lu Xingjian. However, there was a trace of disdain and coldness in the depths of Ba Jingwei's eyes. Lu Xingjian's cultivation was slightly higher than his, roughly at the mid-stage creation lord realm. However, Ba Jingwei knew that tens of thousands of years ago, Lu Xingjian's status had been below his. Back then, Lu Xingjian had only been at the early stage creation lord realm, while Ba Jingwei had been at the mid-stage. However, Ba Jingwei had participated in the assassination of Uxian and had been severely injured by Uxian's final counterattack. Because of his injuries, his cultivation had fallen to the early stage creation lord realm. In the In-Corpse sect, which was a sect that greatly valued the strong, a drop in cultivation meant a drop in status. Ba Jingwei was originally the 3rd elder, but he was overtaken by Lu Xingjian. In the end, the position of 3rd elder was given to Lu Xingjian, and Ba Jingwei became the current 4th elder. According to the sect's rules, the elders ranked at the top had the right to command the elders ranked at the bottom. Therefore, Ba Jingwei had no choice but to accept Lu Xingjian's orders. Moreover, he had to act subservient in front of Lu Xingjian. Lu Xingjian was quite satisfied with Ba Jingwei's attitude. He continued, I found the token of a patrolling soldier from the underworld on the cultivator, who escaped just now. I remember that the person in charge of issuing the token is Elder Shi, right? 6th elder Fan Jiaoyang hurriedly said, yes, Elder Shi often uses this banner to embezzle a lot of resources. However, I always thought that Elder Shi would only give the token to the sect's disciples. However, I didn't expect Elder Shi to be so bold as to give it to a cultivator outside the sect. This time, our In-Corpse sect has suffered a great loss. Elder Shi can't absolve himself of the blame. Elder Lu, let this old man capture Elder Shi and wait for your judgment. Fan Jiaoyang reacted quickly. He hurriedly walked out and cupped his hands at Lu Xingjian with a fawning smile. Lu Xingjian nodded and said, then I'll have to trouble Elder Fan. Fan Jiaoyang grinned and left the place. After a while, he brought a haggard old man to Lu Xingjian. Bang! Fan Jiaoyang rudely threw the old man to the ground in front of Lu Xingjian. The old man didn't seem to feel pain. He hurriedly jumped up and knelt in front of Lu Xingjian. he repeatedly kowtowed and said, "Third Elder, please spare my life. I know I was wrong." "You know what you did wrong," Lu Xingjian said coldly. "I shouldn't have sold the token to others so casually. It caused a cultivator from outside the sect to sneak into our Yin Corpse sect." Elder Shur's voice trembled as he confessed. "Humph. Now, you know you were wrong? It's too late." Lu Xingjian's eyes were cold and ruthless. His right hand formed a claw and slammed into Elder Shur's head. Boom. Chapter 2877. Ghost Plume's Wrath. Elder Lu, that cultivator has taken on so many of our attacks. His injuries are extremely serious. I'm afraid he's not far from death, Ba Jingwei suddenly said. Lu Xingjian coldly looked at Ba Jingwei and said, "Elder Ba, a serious injury doesn't mean death. Watch your words." Ba Jingwei frowned and fell silent, no longer refuting Lu Xingjian. Contact Blood Prison. Those assassins from Blood Prison appear and disappear unpredictably. They are much better at searching compared to us. Hire some Blood Prison assassins to kill off that cultivator. We will not let off those who offend our 10 Extreme Yin Corpse sect easily. Otherwise, the reputation of our 10 Extreme Yin Corpse sect will be sullied. Lu Xingjian's gaze was cold and indifferent. Although Ba Jingwei was displeased, he could only nod in agreement. "Elder Lu, there's nothing for me to do here. I'll go arrange the Blood Prison assassins first." Ba Jingwei did not want to stay here any longer. He cupped his hands at Lu Xingjian and left. Lu Xingjian did not stop him. He only looked at Ba Jingwei's departing figure indifferently. Then he waved his sleeve and said, "Go and arrange for the informants in the sect to gather as much information as possible about that cultivator. The more detailed, the better. Once I find out who that cultivator is, I'll not only kill him, I'll also destroy the power behind him. I'll uproot him and destroy his family." Everyone agreed and quickly dispersed. Lu Xingjian also left the place and headed for his own cave. Sakyamuni and Ghost Plume didn't leave, but their expressions didn't look too good. Originally, when they learned that there was a foreign cultivator causing trouble near the sect and escaping from the sect, they thought that it was Zhuowen. However, when they chased after him, they discovered that the troublemaker was not Zhuowen, but a fat man. Moreover, the fatty was very despicable. As he fled, he kept cursing. He cursed almost everyone who was chasing after him. If this wasn't a big deal, the fatty's mouth wasn't ordinary. Not only did he curse them, but he also cursed their 18 generations of ancestors and anyone related to them. At that time, all the cultivators who were chasing after the fatty, including Lu Xingjian, had ugly expressions on their faces. They felt that the fatty was asking for a beating. However, that fatty's ability to escape was simply too powerful. Even though Lu Xingjian had gathered Ba Jingwei and the other 5 elders, they were still unable to catch up to that fatty. They were only able to use long-range attacks to seriously injure that fatty. That Zhuowen should have been brought in by Yin Wuxia. Since the one who escaped wasn't Zhuowen, then where could that Zhuowen be? Sakyamuni frowned, puzzled. Ghost Plume said in a deep voice, "I'm not sure, but I'm sure that Zhuowen is still in the 10 Extremes Yin Corpse sect. If he left the 10 Extremes Yin Corpse sect, it's impossible for there to be no news from our sect." Sakyamuni nodded, feeling a little helpless. Although he hated Zhuowen to the bone, he couldn't wait to find him and kill him. However, he had completely lost all clues. He didn't know where Zhuowen was, let alone take revenge. Suddenly, the communication jade talisman at Ghost Plume's waist lit up. He sensed something and opened the communication jade talisman. His expression suddenly became very ugly. "Senior Brother Ghost Plume, what's wrong?" Sakyamuni saw that Ghost Plume's expression was not right and quickly asked, "My cave abode has been destroyed. I have to go back and take a look." Ghost Plume's expression was anxious. He didn't explain much and hurriedly left the place. Sakyamuni was surprised. Ghost Plume was the #1 monster in the 10 Extremes in Corpse sect. Moreover, his status in the sect had always been very high and respected. In the sect, almost everyone knew the location of Ghost Plume's cave abode. Who was so bold as to destroy Ghost Plume's cave abode, even though they knew it was his cave abode? When Gui Ling returned to his cave abode, he saw the dilapidated courtyard, the destroyed formation restriction, and the corpses of the dead guards lying on the ground. His eyes burned with rage. "Who is it? Who dares to cause trouble in my cave abode?" Ghost Plume was so angry that he stomped his feet and roared furiously. He had never suffered such humiliation before. The anger in his chest was difficult to suppress and urgently needed to be vented. Sakyamuni arrived soon after. He was shocked when he saw the ruins around the Blue Moon Lake. Someone actually dared to destroy Ghost Plume's cave abode. This person was too bold. Sakyamuni didn't doubt that if Ghost Plume found the culprit, he would definitely beat him to death to vent his anger. "Senior brother Ghost Plume, do you think it's Zhuowen? Since Elderine Wuxia is related to Zhuowen, and Elderine was imprisoned by you," Sakyamuni suddenly said. Ghost Plume calmed down. His expression changed greatly. He kicked off with his right foot and dived into the Blue Moon Lake. Sakyamuni also realized that his guess might be correct. He hurriedly followed behind Ghost Plume. Not long after, Ghost Plume and Sakyamuni dived to the bottom of the lake and arrived in front of the ancient pagoda. Sakyamuni was no stranger to the ancient pagoda. Ghost Plume had brought him here before. It was also at that time that he learned about the 10 Extremities in Corpse sect cultivating the Dead Man Flower. Of course, Sakyamuni didn't think that cultivating the Dead Man Flower was a big deal. Instead, he quickly accepted it, because the essence energy provided by the Death Flower could greatly increase his cultivation speed, allowing him to quickly level up. Instead, he was addicted to the pleasure of absorbing the Death Flower. "Senior brother Ghost Plume, this ancient pagoda has traces of human activity," Sakyamuni said with a grave expression. Ghost Plume's expression was ferocious. He took a deep breath and calmed himself down with great difficulty. Then he led Sakyamuni into the ancient pagoda. Ghost Plume knew the ancient pagoda all too well. The moment they entered the pagoda, blades of light flew towards them. However, the trajectories of these blades of light seemed to be fixed. Ghost Plume stood there, but the blades of light actually flew around him, not attacking him at all. Thump, thump, thump. Ghost Plume and Sakyamuni walked up the stairs and finally arrived at the 3rd floor of the ancient pagoda. When they saw the empty 3rd floor of the ancient pagoda, Gui Ling's expression changed drastically. It really was Zhuowen. He saved In Wuxia, Sakyamuni muttered to himself. Ghost Plume was silent. He quickly went behind the cross and saw the teleportation array on the ground. His eyes were filled with killing intent. "Junior brother Shirtian, quickly go find Elder Ba and the others. Zhuowen has entered the secret room. We must kill him. Otherwise, I'm afraid our 10 Extremes in Corpse sect will be in trouble." Ghost Plume instructed Sakyamuni and entered the teleportation array. With a flash of light, Ghost Plume disappeared from the teleportation array. Sakyamuni didn't enter the teleportation array. Instead, he left the ancient pagoda and prepared to inform Ba Jingwei and the other elders. He knew that it was very likely that Zhuowen had passed through the teleportation array and entered the underground secret room. Chapter 2878. Deep in the secret chamber, Zhuowen's eyes were solemn as he stared at the cold iron door in front of him. His expression did not look good. The patterns on the iron door in front of him were complex and clear, and they were filled with mysterious power. What made him even more fearful was the cold air that spread from the surface of the iron door. Even he felt terrified by it. In addition, an extremely powerful restriction was set up on the surface of the iron door. This restriction was of a very high level. It should be a peak Genesis grade formation. It covered the surface of the iron door, making the iron door even more terrifying. Zhuowen tried to break open the iron door with brute force, but he was sent flying by the reaction force of the iron door. Moreover, the cold air that spread from the surface of the iron door was very terrifying. It spread from Zhuowen's right arm to his entire body, almost freezing half of his body into ice. If it were not for the fact that Zhuowen's Panga sacred body was extremely extraordinary, Zhuowen would have died when he attacked the iron door. This is the deepest iron door in this underground chamber. It's also the most powerful iron door. If I want to open this iron door, I have to break the restriction on the surface of the iron door. Zhuowen's eyes were solemn. He knew that it was basically impossible to break open the iron door by force. Thinking of this, he sat down cross-legged and waved his sleeve, summoning array flags. He formed a seal with both hands and used the profound primordial infinity at the same time. This restriction was indeed difficult to deal with, but it was not at the level of the creation grade. At most, it was at the peak of the Genesis grade. As long as the restriction was not at the level of the creation grade, with Zhuowen's current level of formation skills and the profound primordial infinity, it was not difficult to break it. Zhuowen's technique was very familiar. Waves of formation breaking energy spread out from his hands and landed on the restriction in front of him. Suddenly, the light of the restriction on the surface of the iron door began to shake rapidly. All kinds of light surged like waves in the sea. It was extremely turbulent. Zhuowen's eyes were calm. The power of the primordial infinity continued to surge out from his fingertips, causing the formation on the metal door to become even more turbulent. However, amidst this chaos, Zhuowen could clearly feel that the restrictive power on the surface of the iron gate was weakening. Sensing this change, Zhuowen's eyes widened. He knew that this restriction wouldn't last for long. As long as he could break the restriction, he would have a way to open the last iron door. While Zhuowen was breaking the formation, in the outermost stone room of the underground chamber, there was a flash of brilliance, and a handsome young man appeared. The young man looked around and saw that the iron door at the front of the stone chamber had been blasted open. His face turned ugly. This youth was none other than Ghost Plume. Gui Ling's gaze shifted and landed on the stone table in the corner. He took a step to the front of the stone table and saw that the secret compartment at the back of the stone table had been opened. The jade slips that were piled up in the secret compartment were all gone. His eyes burned with rage. Zhuowen, you actually dared to take away such a secret. Today, I'll make sure you die a miserable death. Ghost Plume suppressed his anger and smashed the stone table to smithereens with his right hand. He then took a step forward and rushed into the depths of the iron door. Kacha! A muffled sound, like glass shattering, spread out in the surroundings. Zhuowen suddenly opened his eyes, and joy appeared in his eyes. Countless cracks had appeared on the surface of the iron door. These cracks weren't from the door itself, but from the restriction placed on the surface of the door. He knew that the restriction on the surface of the iron door was about to be broken. Finally, the cracks spread to the extreme and finally shattered into fine powder. Behind the restriction, the lines on the surface of the iron door became even clearer. It was as if the fog had dissipated, making it even clearer. Zhuowen couldn't contain his joy. He stomped his feet and gathered strength in his right fist before smashing it against the iron door. Rumble! A thunder-like explosion spread out, and an invisible wave of air spread out in all directions. The entire underground chamber seemed to be unable to withstand this huge force and began to shake violently. It was as if the sky was falling and the earth was cracking. It was extremely terrifying. The patterns on the surface of the iron door suddenly lit up, and a blue, cold air blasted towards Zhuo-wen. Zhuo-wen narrowed his eyes, and his entire body began to freeze. It seemed as if he would turn into an ice sculpture at any moment. "Break for me." Zhuo-wen's eyes were calm. He didn't care about his current situation. Instead, he used heaven and earth annihilation, and a terrifying destructive energy condensed on his fist. Boom, boom, boom. In an instant, Zhuo-wen blasted out several hundred punches. The power of each punch was extremely terrifying. It seemed as if they could destroy the heavens and earth and shatter the heavens. The heaven and earth annihilation's essence lay in annihilation. The destructive energy produced by using this essence seemed capable of destroying everything. Terrifying destructive energy permeated through the air. The iron door was finally unable to withstand the overwhelming force and completely shattered. Zhuo-wen faced the strong wind and stepped through the iron gate. His long hair was blown by the strong wind and fluttered behind him. He looked like a peerless demon god and was in high spirits. In the instant that he passed through the iron door, Zhuo-wen's eyes were filled with vigilance. His divine sense constantly scanned the area, and he didn't dare to relax in the slightest. Behind the iron door was a very spacious stone chamber. However, this stone chamber was constructed in an extremely luxurious manner. The rock walls were forged from all types of rare ores. The purpose of this stone chamber was most likely to be used to reinforce this secret stone chamber. Holy flame light stone, soul renunciation rock, broken dragon dense sand. Zhuo-wen kept muttering to himself as he looked at the surrounding rock walls. His eyes were bloodshot. The rock walls of this stone chamber were all made from God of Creation grade materials. Furthermore, all of them were precious God of Creation grade materials. Normally, it would be very difficult for Zhuo-wen to obtain such materials. However, in the surrounding rock walls, they were everywhere. Zhuo-wen's heart couldn't help but race. He became extremely hot. Zhuo-wen hurriedly summoned Xiao He from the great world. "Kid, what are you doing?" "I'm cultivating in seclusion in the sword tomb." "Why did you call this dragon lord out in such a hurry?" Xiao He's gaze was unfriendly as he complained incessantly. "Look at the ores and materials around you. The value of these materials is probably much higher than the sword tomb in the great world, right?" Zhuo-wen said softly with a smile on his face. Xiao He's gaze fell on the surrounding rock walls. Immediately, his eyes widened as if someone had pinched some lifeline. "Oh my God, there are so many materials." Xiao He's attitude immediately changed 180 degrees. He kept praising Zhuo-wen and summoned the Blood Immortal Sword and the Death Sacrifice Sword. Chapter 2879. Original Dead. Flower Zhuo-wen shook his head and ignored the madness of the three divine swords. He looked around and observed his surroundings. He found that the stone room around him was very spacious. Bookcases were placed in most of the space, and jade slips were placed in these bookcases. In addition to the bookcases, Zhuo-wen also saw the same storage cabinets that he had seen in the corridor before. However, these storage cabinets were not that big. They were only the size of a human head. Inside these storage cabinets were black skulls with blooming black flowers. Zhuo-wen knew that these were all formed dead flowers. Moreover, Zhuo-wen could clearly feel that the death flower in this huge stone room contained much more energy than the death flowers in the storage cabinets in the corridor. At the front of these storage cabinets, Zhuo-wen saw an altar made of jade. Below the altar, there were 9 futons. The 9 praying mats floated in the air, and a golden skeleton sat cross-legged on each praying mat. Although they were skeletons, their surface was golden, and they exuded an indescribable majestic aura. It was obvious that these golden skeletons must have been peerless experts when they were alive. At the top of the skulls of these 9 golden skeletons, there were 9 golden flowers growing. The 9 golden flowers looked very similar to the dead flowers outside. However, the energy revealed on the surface of the golden flowers was too rich. It was much richer than all the second-generation dead flowers outside combined. I'm afraid this is the original dead flower. What a rich essence! With the help of the essence of these 9 original dead flowers, I'm afraid that my cultivation will progress by leaps and bounds. Zhuowen felt the surging essence energy in the golden flowers. His expression changed slightly, and his eyes became a little hot. Although he was very opposed to the method of making the dead flowers, he had to admit that the essence of the dead flowers was unimaginably beneficial to his cultivation. His original body was already the master of destiny. If he could get one of the original dead flowers, it would not be a problem for his original body to break through to the master of destiny. The surging essence of the flower could even enhance the power of Zhuowen's Pangu's sacred body. However, Zhuowen did not act rashly. He could feel that the surface of these 9 primitive dead man flowers was filled with a faint brilliance. The killing intent contained within them was something that even Zhuowen was wary of. He knew that the primordial dead flower was extremely important. The sect leader of the 10 Extreme Yin Corpse sect, Senki Yin, would definitely have set up a terrifying killing array around the primordial dead flower. Zhuowen took a few steps back. With a wave of his sleeve, he swept all the dead man flowers around him into his great world. At the same time, he did not let go of any of the jade slips on the bookshelves around him. With Zhuowen's current strength, everything around him was swept into the outside world in the blink of an eye. What surprised him was that there were close to 1,000 dead man flowers in the stone room. However, he was even more aware that these 1,000 dead man flowers were actually not as precious as a single primitive dead man flower. Whoosh! Suddenly, the sound of something breaking through the air came from the depths of the corridor behind him. It was getting closer and closer. Zhuowen narrowed his eyes and released his powerful divine, sense like a tide. He immediately discovered that about 100 meters behind him in the corridor, a young man with an unfriendly expression was rushing towards him. Ghost Plume? He has actually returned. Zhuowen frowned slightly, looking at Ghost Plume's expression. He was afraid that Ghost Plume already knew that Zhuowen had broken into this underground secret room. Zhuowen was even more aware that if Ghost Plume knew, then the other experts of the 10 Extreme Yin Corpse sect would soon know as well. Time was of the essence. Thinking of this, Zhuowen immediately took out the Ho-I godly bow and took out an arrow from his great world. He drew the arrow to a third of an arc, and a terrifying killing intent immediately filled the entire stone room. Zhuowen was becoming more and more proficient in using the Ho-I godly bow. Moreover, the arrow shot from the Ho-I godly bow did not need to be stored up. It could be shot out in an instant, and its power was terrifying. Ghost Plume was much stronger than Yin Wuxia. Even if Zhuowen had the power of a 5-star Pangu sacred body, he would most likely be at a disadvantage in a head-on confrontation with Ghost Plume. Unless Zhuowen's Pangu sacred body could reach the peak of the 5-star level, then he would have an absolute advantage in a battle with Ghost Plume. Moreover, time was of the essence. Ghost Plume already knew of his existence, so he would definitely inform the other experts of the sect. He had to get rid of Ghost Plume as soon as possible, before those experts arrived. Boom! Zhuowen gently loosened the fingers on his right hand. Suddenly, a thunderous sound resounded, and an arrow shot out like lightning. The terrifying killing intent was like an erupting wave that filled the entire stone room, giving people an extremely tragic and suffocating feeling. At this moment, Ghost Plume's body was like lightning, flying through the corridor at an extremely fast speed. Along the way, he saw the iron doors in front of him being opened one after another. His eyes were spitting fire, and he knew that Zhuowen had entered the deepest part of the secret chamber. Finally, Ghost Plume arrived in front of the deepest part of the stone room. When he saw the huge iron door being blasted to pieces, the anger in his heart erupted like a volcano. At the same time, Gui Ling also saw that behind the broken iron door there was a lofty figure standing tall like a mountain. He saw the young man's mocking smile, and then Ghost Plume's hair stood on end. This was because he felt an unbearable murderous intent. This murderous intent was so terrifying that it invaded his body, making him feel as if he had fallen into an ice cellar. Ghost Plume reacted quickly, and his gaze instantly fell on the arrow that had just left the young man's hand. The speed of the arrow was extremely fast. It tore through the void, releasing the sound of cloth being torn apart. It was extremely ear-piercing. Retreat! Ghost Plume immediately retreated. At the same time, he took out a black and white compass from his spirit ring, formed a seal with his right hand, and pointed at the center of the compass. Suddenly, the black and white compass emitted a blazing light, and two terrifying black and white beasts appeared, blocking in front of Ghost Plume. What surprised Zhuowen was that these two black and white beasts were quite powerful. They were actually able to block the arrow that was filled with murderous intent. However, from the violent trembling of the black and white beasts, it could be seen that they were barely able to block the arrow, as if they would fall at any time. Ghost Plume's expression was not good. This black and white compass was given to him by Sect Master Senkiyin, and it was a half-step creation grade divine tool. Its power was much stronger than those Genesis grade divine herbs. However, Ghost Plume did not expect the black and white compass to barely block the arrow. It was clear that the arrow was terrifying and powerful. No wonder this guy is so arrogant. He actually has such a powerful trump card. But without this trump card, he's like a bird with broken wings. He's no threat at all. Ghost Plume's eyes flickered. He knew that Zhuowen's strength was not strong, and he mainly relied on this arrow. As long as he could block the arrow, Zhuowen wouldn't have to fear him. Chapter 2880. Interrogation. Zhuowen, you're so confident because of this arrow? You're nothing compared to me now that you've lost your arrow. Ghost Plume breathed a sigh of relief when he saw the black and white compass deflect the arrow. His gaze fell on Zhuowen, and he couldn't help but sneer. You're right. Most of my strength does come from this arrow, but it's enough to kill you, Zhuowen said indifferently. Ghost Plume laughed loudly, his laughter full of mockery. Just as he was about to mock Tang Wulin, his face suddenly stiffened. He saw Zhuowen leisurely take out another arrow from his spirit ring, knocked it on that ordinary wooden bough, and slowly drew it back a third of an arc boom. Suddenly, a terrifying killing intent filled the entire stone room. Moreover, Zhuowen didn't stop there. He clenched his right hand, the veins on his arm bulging, as he forcibly drew the bowstring to 2/3 of an arc. His killing intent was magnified several times at this moment. That terrifying killing intent was simply too frightening. It was like a giant wave that filled the entire space, unbridled and unrestrained. This guy, Ghost Plume, was dumbstruck. He didn't expect Zhuowen to be able to shoot a second arrow. Moreover, this arrow was even more terrifying than the first. If this arrow was shot out, even the black and white compass wouldn't be able to block it. Ghost Plume was horrified at this thought. He wanted to retreat, but he was entangled by the first arrow. If he wanted to retreat, he would have to endure the first arrow's attack. "Damn it!" Ghost Plume cursed. His eyes flashed with determination as he gave up on the black and white compass and turned to flee. Whoosh! The moment Ghost Plume gave up on the black and white compass, the black and white behemoth dissipated. The first arrow, filled with killing intent, shot out explosively and blasted into Ghost Plume's back. Ghost Plume was already prepared. He shifted his body several inches to the side, allowing the arrow to pass through his shoulder blade and into the stone wall beside him. Poochie! Ghost Plume let out a muffled groan and spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was pale and bloodless as he fell to the ground. But very quickly, he crawled back up and continued to flee forward. Zhuowen's eyes were cold. He loosened the fingers on his right hand, and the second arrow shot out. It carried a fierce killing intent like an angry dragon. Ghost Plume screamed. He frantically tried to escape, but the arrow was too fast. Moreover, the killing intent in the arrow had locked onto Ghost Plume. No matter where Ghost Plume went, he would be hunted down by the arrow. Poochie! The arrow pierced through Ghost Plume's back, bringing with it a mist of blood. The Ghost Plume was sent flying into the air by the terrifying force of the arrow, then heavily smashed into the rock wall in front of him. His entire body was embedded in the rock wall, creating a human-shaped crater. Zhuowen took a step forward and lifted Ghost Plume with his right hand. At this moment, Ghost Plume's entire body was twitching. A mist of blood burst out, and he was on the verge of death. The killing intent in the arrow was terrifying. The moment it hit Ghost Plume, the killing intent flooded Ghost Plume's entire body. Not only did it severely injure Ghost Plume's physical body, but it also severely injured Ghost Plume's soul. At this moment, Ghost Plume's consciousness was somewhat muddled. Zhuowen didn't kill Ghost Plume. Instead, he stored him in the outside world and flew towards the secret room's entrance. Not long after, he arrived at the stone room in front of him. Zhuowen bluntly destroyed the teleportation formation in the stone room. After destroying the transmission array, Zhuowen took Ghost Plume out again and asked, "Are there any other transmission arrays in this underground secret room apart from this one?" Ghost Plume's eyes had turned white. His consciousness was muddled, and his body was twitching violently. Zhuowen frowned slightly. He took out a heart-calming and spirit-nourishing pill and had Ghost Plume swallow it. The heart-calming and spirit-nourishing pill was an eternal grade divine pill. Moreover, it was specially made to treat injuries to the soul. It was one of the most precious eternal grade divine pills. The effect of the heart-calming and spirit-nourishing pill was pretty good. After swallowing it, Ghost Plume's eyes gradually turned white, and he finally regained a trace of consciousness. Ghost Plume's eyes first revealed a confused look, but when he looked at Zhuowen in front of him, all the hair on his body stood on end, and a look of fear appeared on his face. He wanted to escape, but he found that the back of his collar was tightly held in Zhuowen's hand, making it impossible for him to escape. Moreover, his injuries were so serious that he didn't even have the strength to mobilize the power in his body, let alone break free from Zhuowen's grip. "Zhuowen, you've got guts. You broke into this underground secret room without permission and dared to hurt me. You've committed an unforgivable crime. If you don't confess now, you may still have a way out." Ghost Plume's voice was trembling, and there was a trace of panic in his tone. "Who's the one giving a way out now?" Zhuowen slapped Ghost Plume to the ground. The latter fell to the ground in a sorry state. His cheeks were swollen and swollen. Ghost Plume's eyes were spewing fire, but after sensing Zhuowen's biting, cold, murderous gaze, the anger in his heart was immediately extinguished. Right now, his injuries were too severe. In front of Zhuowen, he was no different from a mortal without the strength to truss a chicken. If Zhuowen wanted to kill him, it would be very simple. Moreover, Ghost Plume was even more afraid of the terrifying arrow on Zhuowen's body. Just now, he had been seriously injured by Zhuowen's terrifying arrow. Zhuowen stepped on Ghost Plume's back. The latter groaned and spat out a mouthful of blood. He lay face down on the ground, unable to get up no matter how hard he struggled. "I'm the one asking you a question. If you dare say another word, I'll kill you." Zhuowen's eyes were cold, and his voice was filled with killing intent. Ghost Plume trembled. He knew that Zhuowen would definitely do as he said and kill him, so he cleverly shut his mouth and didn't say a word. "I'll ask you one more time. Is there another teleportation array in this underground secret room? If you don't tell me the truth, I can search your soul. However, I can't guarantee that your soul won't be in danger during the process." Zhuowen's eyes narrowed, and the sharp aura in them caused Ghost Plume's expression to change drastically. He understood the meaning behind Zhuowen's words. "Zhuowen, this underground secret room is very important. Now that you've trespassed here, the sect leader won't let you off. When the time comes, you'll face the endless pursuit of the 10 ultimate Corps sect. If you let me go and promise that today's matter won't be leaked, I'll definitely protect you and let you leave the 10 ultimate Corps sect safely." Ghost Plume made a solemn vow and looked at Zhuowen with a fervent gaze. Slap. Unfortunately, Ghost Plume was greeted with a resounding slap that stunned Ghost Plume. "I don't believe your promise at all. I'll ask you for the third time now. Is there another teleportation array here? If you still don't answer, then you won't have the chance to." Chapter 2881. The Illegitimate Child. There's another teleportation array hidden in the deepest stone chamber of this underground chamber. Ghost Plume had no choice but to reveal the location of the second teleportation array. Zhuowen carried Ghost Plume and returned to the deepest part of the underground chamber, arriving at the spacious stone chamber. Most of the items in the deepest part of the stone chamber had been plundered clean by Zhuowen. At this moment, it looked very spacious and empty at the center of the stone chamber. The altar was still standing. Below the altar, the 9 primitive dead flowers were emitting a dazzling golden radiance. Surging essence energy was constantly surging upwards, forming a terrifying essence energy vortex. Zhuowen threw Ghost Plume to the ground and said with a cold gaze, "Speak. Where is the second teleportation array in this stone chamber?" Zhuowen was puzzled. When he was searching the stone chamber earlier, he didn't find any teleportation arrays. Therefore, he could only ask Ghost Plume. Ghost Plume pointed at the ground about 7 inches in front of the primitive dead flowers and said, "There is a palm-sized pattern there. Channel your energy into the pattern and the teleportation array will naturally appear." Ghost Plume didn't dare to deceive him. His life was now in Zhuowen's hands. If he hid anything and was discovered by Zhuowen, he would die a miserable death. After all, Zhuowen could easily soul search him and then kill him. After sealing Ghost Plume's energy, Zhuowen walked to the spot 7 inches away from the primitive dead flowers and gently wiped away the soil on the ground with his right hand. Soon after, he discovered that under the soil there was indeed a palm-sized pattern tile. Zhuowen didn't act blindly without thinking. Instead, he lifted Ghost Plume and undid the seal on Ghost Plume's body. He coldly said, "Activate this pattern." Ghost Plume's expression was unsightly. He knew that Zhuowen didn't trust him. However, he felt extremely helpless in his heart. He knew that he had to do as Zhuowen said. After all, his life was now in his opponent's hands. Ghost Plume barely managed to channel a sliver of energy into the pattern, causing it to emit a dazzling light. Soon after, Zhuowen discovered that, with the pattern as the center, complex array patterns appeared. Zhuowen could tell at a glance that the pattern of the array formation was a teleportation array. However, Zhuowen soon realized that something was amiss. The light from the teleportation array grew brighter and brighter until it eventually engulfed Ghost Plume. This guy wants to escape. Zhuowen reacted quickly. He pointed with his right hand and immediately used the space-time sacred art. A huge space-time river emerged, circling above the teleportation array that was densely covered in light patterns. A purple sun smashed over without warning, and instantly time stopped. Although the time stopped was very short, it was enough for Zhuowen. Zhuowen took a step forward and rushed to the teleportation array, like lightning. His right hand formed a claw and grabbed Ghost Plume's shoulder, which was covered in the light of the teleportation array. Then he twisted it fiercely. Ghost Plume screamed, but his eyes revealed a resolute look. He did not hesitate to cut off his shoulder. Blood splattered, but he did not slow down and wanted to completely teleport away. Unfortunately, Zhuowen could not do as Ghost Plume wished and used the space-time sacred art to the extreme. The space-time river in the surroundings continued to condense into a terrifying space-time river that engulfed the entire teleportation array. Instantly, the teleportation array that had been activated came to a standstill. Although the time stop only lasted for a breath of time, it was more than enough for Zhuowen. Zhuowen's right hand was like lightning. He grabbed Ghost Plume's head and pulled, forcibly pulling him out of the teleportation array. The moment Ghost Plume was pulled out of the teleportation array, the light from the teleportation array reached its peak and quickly dimmed. Clearly, the teleportation was over. Ghost Plume was thrown to the side in a daze. He knew that he was done for. Zhuowen ignored Ghost Plume. Instead, he clenched his right hand into a fist and punched the teleportation array, without restraint. A terrifying energy burst out, and the ear-piercing sound of glass shattering came from the teleportation array. Zhuowen's power was very terrifying, rudely destroying this transmission array completely. After doing all this, Zhuowen's gaze landed on Guiling, who was not far away. The killing intent in his eyes was no longer concealed and was on the verge of bursting out. Guiling felt the terrifying killing intent, and his whole body trembled violently. However, he still said with fear in his voice, "Zhuowen, you can't kill me. I'll tell you now that I have another identity. I'm the son of Sect Master Sun Qin. If you kill me, my father won't let you off." Zhuowen's gaze was strange. Ghost Plume was one of the 5 freaks of the host region and the #1 genius of the 10 Extremes Yin Corp sect. He knew all this. However, he never knew that Ghost Plume was the son of Senki Yin. If Ghost Plume was telling the truth, then this matter must be known by everyone in the host region. Ghost Plume could also see the disbelief in Zhuowen's eyes. He hurriedly said, "I'm only the illegitimate son of the sect master. This isn't something to be proud of, so it hasn't been made public. However, the sect master truly treats me as his own son. If you kill me, you know the consequences when the sect master returns and finds out." Ghost Plume seemed to have gained a bit of confidence when he said this, and there was a hint of arrogance in his voice. Unfortunately, Zhuowen raised his hand and slapped Ghost Plume, slamming his head into the ground. Zhuowen walked over with large strides and lifted Guiling up once more. After that, he used his right hand to slap Guiling's face without restraint, causing the sounds of slapping to ring out continuously. After Ghost Plume was beaten black and blue, Zhuowen finally stopped and threw him to the ground. "Ghost Plume, so what if you're the son of Senki Yin? Even if Senki Yin provoked me, I still dared to beat him up, not to mention you're just his son," Zhuowen said expressionlessly. Ghost Plume trembled with anger, but at the same time, he was even more terrified. He realized that Zhuowen was completely fearless. He didn't even put Senki Yin in his eyes. He probably wouldn't even blink when killing him. "I don't want to play guessing games with you anymore. I didn't want to kill you, but unfortunately, you didn't cooperate at all. Now, I can only search your soul." Zhuowen didn't want to waste any more words with Ghost Plume. He placed his right hand on Ghost Plume's head, intending to search his soul. His soul had been modified by the Panga banner, so it was much stronger than Ghost Plume's. Naturally, it wasn't too difficult to search his soul. Ghost Plume's pupils shrank to the size of needles. He hurriedly said, "I know I was wrong. Please let me go this time." Ghost Plume finally put down his dignity and begged Zhuowen for mercy. Unfortunately, Zhuowen didn't care at all. He was determined to search Ghost Plume's soul. "I know how to undo the formation on the surface of the original dead flower. As long as you let me go, I can help you take it out." Chapter 2882. Devouring Essence Zhuowen stopped what he was doing and looked at Ghost Plume with interest. He didn't expect Ghost Plume to know how to undo the restriction on the surface of the undead flower. Zhuowen had examined the restriction before and found it to be very powerful. Even if he used the primordial everlasting sword, it would be very difficult for him to break it. That was why he didn't immediately try to undo the restriction on the surface of the undead flower. Instead, he first searched through the other items in the stone room before slowly studying the restriction on the surface of the undead flower. Now that Ghost Plume said he knew how to undo the restriction on the surface of the undead flower, Zhuowen didn't doubt him too much. There were a total of 2 teleportation arrays in the depths of this underground secret room. One of them led to Ghost Plume's cave abode, while the other led to Senki Yin's cave abode. From this, it could be seen that Senki Yin truly valued Ghost Plume, his illegitimate son. In that case, it was reasonable that Ghost Plume knew how to undo the restriction on the surface of the undead flower. Seeing Zhuowen slowly remove his right hand, Ghost Plume sighed in relief. However, his eyes were filled with bitterness. "Since you know, why don't you undo the restriction on the surface of the undead flower for me to see? If you can undo it, I promise to spare your life. If you can't, then you can just die." Zhuowen's eyes were cold and merciless. He wasn't polite to Ghost Plume at all. He knew that Ghost Plume wouldn't yield to force, so his attitude had to be firm. Ghost Plume's eyes flickered. He said in a deep voice, "Zhuowen, I need you to swear a heavenly oath. If I can undo the restriction on the undead flower, then you must spare my life. Otherwise, you will suffer a backlash from the heavens." "You don't believe me?" Zhuowen grinned. His smile contained a biting cold intent. Ghost Plume couldn't help but shrink back. "Ghost Plume, you should know that as long as I search your soul, you won't be able to keep any secrets from me," Zhuowen said calmly. Ghost Plume's eyes flickered, but he shook his head and said, "Zhuowen, you don't understand at all. This primitive death flower restriction is powerful, but Sect Master also imposed a bloodline restriction on it. Only cultivators with his bloodline are qualified to break this restriction. If you are not related by blood, even if you know the method to break the formation, you will still fail in the end and be devoured by the power of the formation." Bang! As soon as Ghost Plume finished speaking, he felt as if he had suffered a heavy blow to his chest. He spat out a mouthful of blood and fell heavily to the ground not far away, his entire body twitching. Gui Ling struggled to get up and looked at Zhua when in front of him with a face full of fear. "Ghost Plume, let me tell you, Zhuowen, hate being threatened the most. Do you think I will tolerate you just because you threaten me?" Zhuowen's eyes were filled with disdain. "After I kill you and obtain the method to break the formation from you, I will try it myself, and you will be dead for sure. There are only 2 paths in front of you now. Either you break the formation for me, or you die. As for making me swear an oath to the heavenly Tao to be bound by you, don't think too much about it. That is impossible." Zhuowen's attitude was very unyielding. Ghost Plume's face paled. in the end, he lowered his head and stopped bargaining with Zhuowen. He knew that this method wouldn't work on Zhuowen. Ghost Plume staggered over to the primitive death flower restriction. He bit the tip of his tongue and spat out a mouthful of essence blood, his hands forming a series of seals. This time, Ghost Plume didn't play any tricks. He was really afraid. He knew very well that if he dared to play any tricks, Zhuowen would really kill him. Zhuowen silently watched Ghost Plume's every move. He didn't let down his guard. This Ghost Plume was very cunning, and he wouldn't make the same mistake. However, when he saw the restriction on the surface of the primitive death flower gradually dim, he slowly relaxed. He knew that Ghost Plume was really trying to break the formation. After about half an incense stick's time, the restriction on the surface of the primitive death flower finally began to crack. Finally, it shattered with a bang. The moment the restriction shattered, a terrifying wave of essence energy erupted and filled the entire stone room. Originally, the essence chi emitted by the primordial dead flower was already terrifying enough due to the obstruction of the restriction. Now that the restriction had shattered, the majority of the essence energy accumulated within the restriction was like a wild horse that had broken free of its reins. It was vast and majestic. Zhuowen's eyes lit up with excitement when he sensed the powerful essence energy emitting from the restriction. Ghost Plume immediately retreated after breaking the restriction. His eyes were filled with apprehension and even some fear. Zhuowen sensed Ghost Plume's abnormality, but he didn't immediately charge forward. Instead, he looked at Ghost Plume indifferently. Ghost Plume felt his scalp go numb from Zhuowen's gaze. He could only brace himself and say, "Zhuowen, the raw materials used to cultivate the primitive death flower were all early-stage creation realm experts when they were alive. They were defeated by the sect master and were captured by the sect master. After the sect master cultivated these 9 primordial dead man flowers, he left behind several backup plans. The restriction and bloodline restriction were only 2 of them. The other backup plan was these 9 golden bodies. If you want to obtain the 9 primitive death flowers, you have to defeat the 9 golden bodies. Otherwise, you don't have the right to obtain them." Zhuowen nodded. He only believed half of Ghost Plume's words. Defeating the 9 golden bodies to obtain the primitive death flowers was probably the right thing to do. As for how strong the 9 golden bodies were, Zhuowen wasn't sure. He also knew that even if he asked Ghost Plume, the latter probably wouldn't tell him the truth. However, from Gui Ling's performance, the strength of these 9 golden bodies was not ordinary at all. Zhuowen imprisoned Ghost Plume again and threw him into the outside world. Then he clasped his hands together, and his body emitted a crystalline radiance. At the same time, black vortexes emerged around Zhuowen's body. These vortexes weren't large, only the size of a thumb. However, there were many of them, and they densely covered his entire body. A terrifying, devouring power was generated from these black vortexes. Soon after, the surging essence emitted from the 9 primitive dead man flowers on the heads of the 9 golden bodies was rapidly absorbed into Zhuowen's body. In the process of absorbing the essence, Zhuowen's body became more and more crystalline. Zhuowen's eyes were full of surprise. The essence of the primitive death flowers was actually so beneficial to his body that it could promote the evolution and consolidation of his body. Although the speed of evolution was very slow, at least it did make his body evolve. Since the Pangu's sacred body had advanced to 5 stars, it had become extremely picky about energy. The special class Heavenly Path crystal was useless to the current Pangu sacred body. No matter how many special class Heavenly Path crystals he absorbed, his Pangu sacred body showed no signs of evolution. However, the primitive death flowers were different. They could actually make his body evolve. Moreover, This was only the essence of the primitive death flowers. If he absorbed the primitive death flowers, the evolution of his Pangu's sacred body would probably be even faster and more terrifying. Chapter 2883. Battle Golden Body ha ha ha. What Zhuowen didn't notice was that when he was crazily absorbing the essence of the primordial dead flower, the one in front of the 9 golden bodies moved slightly. Its golden head turned toward Zhuowen. 2 golden flames suddenly flickered in its empty eye sockets. A vast and terrifying aura escaped, causing the entire stone chamber to tremble. Zhuowen naturally felt this terrifying aura. He looked at the golden body in front of him that was slowly standing up. Boom! The golden flames in the golden body's eye sockets flickered violently. The entire stone chamber seemed to be in a furnace. The temperature was frighteningly high. The golden body suddenly jumped, causing the ground to shake. It appeared in front of Zhuowen as if it had teleported. Its right fist was shining with golden light, and it directly punched toward Zhuowen's face. Zhuowen's body was crystal clear. Instead of retreating, he clenched his right fist and punched out. His joints creaked, and a strong wind swept out, forming a terrifying storm. Boom! The 2 fists collided, and a thunderous sound exploded. Terrifying waves of air spread out with the 2 of them as the center, sweeping everything around them. Zhuowen let out a muffled groan and continued to retreat. The golden body took a step back and stabilized its body. Both of its feet once again pushed off the ground and shot out like an arrow. Its speed was extremely fast as it continued to attack Zhuowen. Zhuowen's eyes were gloomy. This golden body was very powerful. It was worthy of being an early-stage creation master when it was alive. Although it was only a skeleton now and its strength had decreased, it was still around the late-stage creation master. Its strength was comparable to Yin Wuxie's. Zhuowen did defeat Yin Wuxie in the past, but he relied on Hou Yi's divine bow and not the power of his Pangu's sacred body. According to Zhuowen's estimation, his current 5-star Pangu's sacred body should be able to fight an early-stage creation master, but he would definitely be at a disadvantage. Just now, when he fought with the golden body, he knew that he would not be able to defeat the golden body. However, Zhuowen was not discouraged, nor was he prepared to use the Hou Yi divine bow. This golden body's strength was not much stronger than his, and it was just the right target for him to hone his strength. Kill! Zhuowen's fighting spirit soared to the sky. He pounced over like a wild beast and fought with the golden body. The terrifying aftermath spread out and turned the space of the entire stone room upside down. While Zhuowen was fighting the golden body, the devouring vortexes all over his body were like a whale sucking in water, sucking in the surrounding essence energy. Furthermore, in the process of fighting with him, the golden body was constantly consuming its essence energy. At the same time, it was releasing even more essence energy. During the battle between Zhuowen and the golden body, Zhuowen became more and more courageous. His Pangu's sacred body was also constantly strengthening. After 100 rounds of fighting, Zhuowen suddenly roared. The surface of his body became crystal clear like jade, and his physical aura was instantly strengthened to a new height. Zhuowen's eyes were filled with excitement. In the process of absorbing the essence energy, his Pangu's sacred body had reached the peak of the 5-star early stage. He was only a little bit away from reaching the middle stage of the 5-star early stage. I must defeat this golden body and obtain this primitive dead man flower. Then my Pangu's sacred body will have no problem reaching the middle stage of the 5-star early stage. Zhuowen's eyes were burning with passion, and his attacks became even fiercer. Especially after using the tyrannical Tao slaughtering skill, his attacks became even more fierce and powerful, completely suppressing the golden body for a while. Finally, Zhuowen roared and punched out with his fists like lightning. Waves of powerful Taoist rhymes streaked across the sky, and they were even more dazzling than fireworks. Crack! The golden body was directly smashed into pieces by Zhuowen's fists. Zhuowen's eyes were sharp, and his hands were fast. He took off the golden body's head, and the golden primitive dead man flower grew quietly on the top of its head. Zhuowen crushed the golden flower into powder, and the terrifying essence qi that surged out was like a golden mist, rolling and surging around Zhuowen. Zhuowen unceremoniously swallowed the golden essence energy into his body, through the numerous acupoints on the surface of his body. It spread into his flesh and blood, nourishing his physical energy and strengthening his Pangu's sacred body. Boom! A muffled thunder-like sound came from Zhuowen's body, followed by the sound of dense bones hitting each other. Zhuowen's body was sparkling and translucent, and it was glowing green. Zhuowen's body was full of green light, and he was like a god descending to earth. Zhuowen let out a long roar, and his eyes were full of joy. Since his Pangu's sacred body had advanced to 5 stars, he had finally made another breakthrough. What a powerful force! I've only advanced from the early stage of 5 stars to the middle stage of 5 stars, but my strength has increased so much. Zhuowen casually waved his right hand, and the surrounding space was directly torn apart, revealing a black void. This force was more than several times stronger than before. Ha ha ha! When Zhuowen destroyed the first golden body, the remaining 8 golden bodies also moved. Golden flames burned in their eye sockets, as if they were going to destroy the world. Whoosh! 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 The 8 golden bodies stood up at the same time and rushed toward Zhuowen like 8 terrifying golden lights. Zhuowen was not afraid. He took a step forward, and his body was full of green. Ring-shaped waves of air rolled out, and it was extremely terrifying. Then Zhuowen performed the tyrannical Tao slaughtering skill, and his fists turned into the world's sharpest weapons. He quickly blasted them out, and they transformed into blurry phantoms. Bang! 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 8 dull sounds rang out. The moment the 8 golden bodies bombarded Zhuowen, they were all blown away by a terrifying force. They smashed into the surrounding rock walls. The 3 divine swords, who had been collecting precious ores in the surroundings, watched this scene with their mouths agape, especially Xiaohe, who muttered to herself, "This kid has only advanced by a small realm, and his strength has increased so much." What Xiaohe did not know was that the higher the level of the Panga's sacred body, the more difficult it was to advance. Naturally, the increase was also terrifying. Generally speaking, the primordial dead flower was enough to let a peak eternal overlord cultivator completely step into the 3rd step of the Tao proving realm and consolidate it. However, Zhuowen had used a primordial dead flower to advance from the early stage of 5 stars to the middle stage of 5 stars. This showed how difficult it was to advance the Pangu's sacred body. At the instant the 8 golden bodies were blasted flying, Zhuowen bounced off with his legs and shot out explosively. Very soon, he approached the golden body that was closest to him, and he suddenly smashed his fist out with the tyrannical Tao slaughtering technique. It pierced through the golden body's chest and came out from the back. Then Zhuowen's right hand shook, and the seemingly indestructible golden body shattered into pieces, shattering into golden powder on the ground. Only a golden head and the primitive dead man flower were left. The moment Zhuowen destroyed the 2nd golden avatar, the remaining 7 golden avatars had already stabilized themselves. They fearlessly pounced at Zhuowen again, at an extremely fast speed. Chapter 2884. Alarming the 10 extremes in corpse sekbang. Bang! Bang! Continuous explosions resounded once again. Immediately, the 7 golden bodies that had besieged Zhuowen when were sent flying in a sorry state, and all of them were embedded in the surrounding rock walls. Zhuowen's body was crystal clear and emitted a strong light. His aura was like rising steam, surging upward and forming a mushroom-shaped air wave. At this moment, Zhuowen was like a god or a demon. His long hair fluttered in the wind, and each strand was crystal clear like jade. Boom! Zhuowen took a step forward and rushed to the nearest golden body in an instant. He opened his right palm and pinched the golden body's face. Zhuowen's strength was too strong. The golden body's skull seemed to be unable to withstand it, and dense cracks appeared. The golden body's bony hands, which seemed to be made of gold, waved wildly. It seemed to be at a loss, as if it was a drowning person. Boom! Zhuowen lifted the golden body above his head and slammed it on the ground. The golden body was pressed to the ground by Zhuowen like a toy. A terrifying force spread out from the ground, causing countless cracks to appear on the ground. The cracks spread out in all directions. It was a terrifying sight. Zhuowen pressed his right hand on the golden body's skull and used his left hand as a knife. He revealed a powerful sky-splitting blade and drilled it into the golden body's chest like a hot knife through butter. The sharp sky-splitting blade pierced through the golden body's sternum without any hindrance, and then came out of the golden body's spine. Then, the golden body's bones were completely shattered into powder under the effect of such a terrifying force. Zhuowen took the golden body's head and stuffed it into the macro world. He then continued to rush toward the remaining 6 golden bodies. After destroying 3 golden bodies in a row, the remaining 6 golden bodies had lost their minds. However, they instinctively sensed danger and began to retreat. Unfortunately, Zhuowen naturally would not let them succeed. He used his movement technique and rushed into the 6 golden bodies. He even used the tyrannical Tao slaying technique, one move after another. Its power was terrifying, and its momentum was shocking. After 30 rounds, Zhuowen destroyed the 4th golden body. After 50 rounds, the 5th golden body was blasted into smithereens. In the 150th round, Zhuowen's right fist was like an electric drill as it fiercely blasted out. It pierced through the chest of the last golden body, and a terrifying energy burst out. All the bones in this golden body had exploded, leaving behind only a complete golden skull, which Zhuowen casually put away into his pouch. Not far away, the weapon spirits of the 3 legendary swords were dumbfounded when they saw this. They felt that this Zhuowen was way too heaven-defying. The 9 golden bodies were no weaker than late-stage God of Creation stage cultivators. Yet they were still defeated by Zhuowen so easily. With a wave of his sleeve, Zhuowen summoned Ghost Plume from the great world. After casually tossing it aside, he sat cross-legged on the other side. Ghost Plume's entire body was imprisoned. It lay on the ground in a sorry state, unable to move. He looked left and right with a puzzled look in his eyes. This was because he did not find the 9 golden bodies with the original dead flower in the stone chamber. Zhuowen ignored Ghost Plume. Instead, he took out the original dead flower. He planned to use the original dead flower to improve his Pangu's sacred body. Looking at the original dead flower in Zhuowen's hand, Ghost Plume's pupils shrank to the size of needles. It could not help but exclaim, "You defeated the 9 golden bodies? How is that possible?" Even a peak God of Creation stage cultivator would not be a match for the 9 golden bodies when they joined forces. However, Zhuowen had defeated all of them. This made Ghost Plume feel incredulous. Zhuowen ignored Ghost Plume. Previously, he had put it into the great world mainly to prevent it from doing anything that would hinder him. Now that he had defeated all 9 golden bodies, and he did not want to expose the existence of the great world too much, he naturally could not let Ghost Plume stay in the great world for too long. Zhuowen held the original dead flower in his hand and began to slowly absorb the essence and energy of the original dead flower. Previously, he had crushed the original dead flower because he was pressed for time. This way, he could absorb all the energy in the flower into his body in a short period of time. This would allow him to advance quickly. However, this also wasted a lot of the energy of the original dead flower. Now that the 9 golden bodies had been defeated, and Ghost Plume was basically useless, there was no threat to Zhuowen in this underground chamber. Naturally, Zhuowen would not use such a wasteful method to absorb the original dead flower. Streams of golden energy flowed into Zhuowen's palm and spread to all the meridians in his body, merging with his flesh and soul. Ghost Plume froze in place, staring blankly at Zhuowen, absorbing the energy of the original dead flower. His heart sank to the bottom. The original dead flower was something that Senki Yin valued greatly, even more than his own life. Now, not only had the underground chamber been broken into and its secrets exposed, even the most precious 9 original dead flowers had been snatched away by Zhuowen. If Senki Yin knew about this, he would be furious, and Ghost Plume would not be able to get away with it. When the time came, he would have to bear the wrath of Senki Yin. Thinking of this, Ghost Plume felt bitter. He knew that even if Zhuowen set him free, he would not have a good ending. He would not be able to escape Senki Yin's punishment, even if he was Senki Yin's illegitimate son. However, it was better than falling into the hands of Zhuowen. After all, Zhuowen might want to kill him, but Senki Yin would not. After all, he was Senki Yin's direct descendant. While Zhuowen was absorbing the energy of the original dead flower in the depths of the underground chamber, the upper echelons of the Yin Corpse sect were shaken. Sakyamuni brought the news of Zhuowen breaking into the underground chamber to the 4th elder, Ba Jingwei. The moment Ba Jingwei heard the news, his eyes spat fire, and his chest burned with anger. He could not contain it, so he immediately rushed into Ghost Plume's cave with Sakyamuni and entered the ancient pagoda at the bottom of the Blue Moon Lake. However, after the 2 of them activated the transmission array in the ancient pagoda, they found that the transmission array did not work. Ba Jingwei's face was very gloomy. He knew that the transmission array that led to the other side of the underground chamber had been destroyed, so the transmission array in the ancient pagoda was completely ineffective. Damn it! It must be that bastard Zhuowen's doing. He destroyed the transmission array to prevent us from entering the depths of the underground chamber to find him. Sakyamuni was also flustered and exasperated. Ghost Plume has already entered. With Ghost Plume's strength, it should not be a problem to capture Zhuowen. Ba Jingwei frowned slightly. Sakyamuni was somewhat helpless, but there was also a hidden worry in his heart. He always felt that Zhuowen was not simple. When he fought with Zhuowen, he was sure that Zhuowen had concealed a portion of his strength. Chapter 2885. Great Elder Gao Yanghong Sakyamuni suddenly said, "Master, Zhuowen is not a simple person. We can't let our guard down. I remember that there should be 2 teleportation arrays that lead to the secret underground chamber. Besides Senior Ghost Plume, don't we have another choice?" Ba Jingwei frowned and said hesitantly, "There are indeed 2 teleportation arrays that lead to the secret underground chamber. However, the 2nd teleportation array is in the Sect Master's Cave. You should know that the Sect Master's Cave is heavily guarded. Even I am not qualified to enter. I remember that the Great Elder is guarding the Sect Master's Cave. Master, you can inform the Great Elder and explain it to him. He should let us in. After all, the secret underground chamber is of great importance. We can't afford to lose it," Sakyamuni continued. Ba Jingwei's eyes flickered. He was moved. He knew about the existence of the secret underground chamber. He had entered it several times, and learned about the existence of the dead flower. He was even lucky enough to obtain a few mature dead flowers. At that time, his cultivation had reached a bottleneck. It was precisely because he had absorbed those mature dead flowers that his cultivation had broken through the bottleneck and advanced to a new realm. Therefore, he had a deep impression of the dead flower. In his heart, he yearned for such a divine medicine with such obvious effects. If some unknown situation happened to the secret underground chamber because of Zhuowen's intrusion, it would be a huge loss for the entire 10 Extremes In Corp sect. I'll send a message to the Great Elder and see what he has to say. Ba Jingwei took out a communication jade talisman and sent a message to the Great Elder, explaining the ins and outs of the matter in detail, especially the matter of Zhuowen breaking into the underground chamber, which he solemnly mentioned. Soon, Ba Jingwei received a reply from the Great Elder. Sure, Tian, follow me to the sect master's cave. The Great Elder already knows and is willing to use the teleportation array in the sect master's cave with us. Ba Jingwei's expression brightened. He called out to Sakyamuni and left the Blue Moon Lake. Soon, the two of them arrived at the sect master's cave. The sect leader's abode was not as grand as he had imagined. Instead, it was filled with green mountains and clear waters, as if it was an ordinary mountain valley in the mortal world. On the surface of this beautiful mountain forest scenery, there were layers upon layers of restriction lights flashing. Obviously, there was an extremely powerful restriction formation set up on the surface of the sect master's cave mansion. Moreover, it was not just one formation, but many large formations combined to form a terrifying group of formations. At this moment, on top of an inconspicuous rock at the entrance of the valley, a skinny old man sat cross-legged. The old man was dressed in plain black clothes. The only thing that stood out about him was his pair of extremely sharp eyes. They were constantly emitting a breathtaking light, giving people the feeling that they were being stared at by an eagle. The skinny old man in front of him was the Grand Elder of the 10 Ultimate In Corp sect, Gao Yanghong. His strength was second only to Senki In within the 10 Ultimate In Corp sect. Great Elder! Ba Jingwei and Sakyamuni bowed deeply to the skinny old man, their eyes filled with awe. Gao Yanghong's face was expressionless. He looked at Ba Jingwei and said, Elder Ba, are you sure that an outsider has broken into the secret underground chamber? If I find out that you are lying, don't blame me for being rude to you. Ba Jingwei's body trembled, and he hurriedly said, Rest assured, Great Elder, I am not lying. You know that there is a teleportation array hidden in Ghost Plume's cave mansion. Zhuowen entered the secret underground chamber from the teleportation array in the Blue Moon Lake. That Zhuowen is very cunning. He destroyed the teleportation array on the other side. Gao Yanghong nodded. He knew about Ghost Plume's identity and naturally knew that Senki In had set up a teleportation array in Ghost Plume's cave mansion. Come with me, Gao Yanghong said, then led Ba Jingwei and Sakyamuni into the valley. After a while, the group of three passed through layers of restrictions and arrived in front of a small pool in the deepest part of the valley. Ba Jingwei and Sakyamuni's faces were filled with awe and dread. Along the way, they could clearly feel the strong killing intent of the restrictions around them. They had no doubt that if they accidentally triggered these restrictions, they would die without a burial place. Gao Yanghong came to a spot 7 inches in front of the small pool, squatted down, and used his right hand to wipe away the soil, revealing a palm-sized pattern. Gao Yanghong activated this pattern, and the pattern of a teleportation array appeared in the center of the pool. This is the teleportation array set up by Sect Master. Let's go in. Gao Yanghong's eyes were calm as he stepped into the center of the pool. Ba Jingwei and Sakyamuni naturally hurried to follow. Great Elder, the teleportation array at Blue Moon Lake has been destroyed. Will Zhuowen find the second teleportation array in the underground chamber and destroy it as well? Sakyamuni asked as soon as he landed on the pool. Gao Yanghong smiled faintly and said, "You can rest assured that the teleportation array set up by Sect Master here is very secretive. You need to find the corresponding hidden compartment to activate it. The same is true for the teleportation array in the underground chamber. It is impossible for outsiders to find the teleportation array here." Sakyamuni nodded, his eyes flashing. He knew that with Great Elder's help, Zhuowen was doomed. Thinking that Zhuowen's head was about to be separated from his body, Sakyamuni's cheeks flushed with excitement as he imagined the scene of Zhuowen being captured alive and tortured. However, Sakyamuni soon discovered that something was wrong because the teleportation array above the pool did not move. He revealed a puzzled expression and looked at Gao Yanghong in front of him. The latter's eyes were gloomy and his hands were still forming seals, but the teleportation array did not move at all. "Great Elder, what's going on?" Ba Jingwei was a little stunned and asked very honestly. Gao Yanghong took a deep breath, but his eyes were spitting fire. He was very angry. "The teleportation array here has been destroyed." Gao Yanghong's voice was very stiff. "What?" Ba Jingwei and Sakyamuni were shocked. One had to know that Gao Yanghong had just said that the teleportation array here was very secretive, and the other end of the underground chamber was even more secretive. Zhuowen would never be able to find it. However, Gao Yanghong had just made a solemn vow, and the teleportation array was actually unable to be used. This was a ruthless slap to Gao Yanghong's face. Gao Yanghong also felt the surprised gazes of Ba Jingwei and Sakyamuni, and his old face turned slightly red. However, his heart was soon filled with anger and disbelief. He was angry that an outsider named Zhuowen had actually destroyed the second teleportation array. What was even more inconceivable was how that guy had found the second teleportation array. Although he knew the location of the second teleportation array, Senki In had told him about it. If he were to look for it himself, it would be impossible to find it. Chapter 2886. 5-star Peak. Could it be that something happened to Senior Ghost Plume in the underground chamber? That's why Zhuowen learned of the location of the second teleportation array. Sakyamuni suddenly said, "Is Zhuowen that strong? Even Ghost Plume is no match for him?" Gao Yanghong was puzzled. He had learned from Ba Jingwei that Zhuowen, who had broken into the underground chamber, was also a member of the younger generation and had defeated Sakyamuni. Sakyamuni was indeed talented, but his strength was still lacking. The gap between him and Ghost Plume was not small. Ghost Plume was one of the 5 great monstrous geniuses and the #1 expert of the younger generation in the 10 Extremities Incorp sect. His strength was comparable to the experts of the older generation. In the younger generation of the host region, apart from the other 4 monstrous geniuses who were also part of the 5 monstrous geniuses, Gui Ling basically could not find an opponent in the younger generation. Zhuowen is indeed not simple. Perhaps Ghost Plume was tricked by him in the underground chamber. After all, he entered the underground chamber before Ghost Plume. Moreover, we can't let him go. After all, he entered the underground chamber and saw everything inside. This is not a good thing. Ba Jingwei's eyes were gloomy. He looked at Gao Yanghong, obviously intending to let Gao Yanghong make the decision. "We can't let him leave the sect. Otherwise, we won't be able to answer to the sect master. Moreover, what he saw can't be leaked to the outside world. It will be very detrimental to our sect," Gao Yanghong said solemnly. "Great Elder, the 2 teleportation arrays have been destroyed. What should we do now?" Ba Jingwei asked helplessly. "We can only take one step at a time. When the underground secret chamber was being built, The sect master had prepared a passageway leading to the surface at the entrance of the underground secret chamber. However, the passage is connected in all directions and is shrouded in the power of the Earth's core. Most of our strength will be suppressed in the passage and will only be restored after entering the underground chamber, Gao Yanghong said. Ba Jingwei and Sakyamana's expressions brightened. They only knew about the teleportation array, but this was the first time they had heard about the passage to the underground chamber. They knew that this was a secret. Perhaps only the Great Elder knew about the extra passage. The others probably didn't know about it. However, it will take 3 days to go deep into the underground chamber, and there is a limit of 3 people. Since I have to maintain the stability of the passage, I can't go in. Go in, Gao Yanghong said. Ba Jingwei was pondering for a moment, and then turned to Sakyamuni. Sure Tian, Don, don't go in. I will, and I will go too, Great Elders. Sakura opened his mouth, but didn't say anything in the end. He knew that Ba Jingwei was afraid that he wasn't strong enough to enter the secret underground chamber. Although Ba Jingwei was doing this for his own good, Sakyamuni felt very uncomfortable in his heart. Zhuowen's figure appeared in his mind. Back then, Tian was just an ant in his eyes, but now he had far surpassed him. He had even lost the qualifications to confront Zhuowen. Sakyamuni clenched his fists. He was very unwilling, but more than that, he felt helpless. I want to become stronger, Sakyamuni roared in his heart. Ever since he joined the 10 Absolutes Incorp sect, he had always been the fastest cultivating genius. He was envied and looked up to by many of his peers, and the older generation was full of expectations for him. It could be said that Sakura was a monstrous genius who was favored by all. He originally thought that Zhuowen was already not worth mentioning, but he didn't expect that Zhuowen would easily defeat him in the sect, forcefully slapping his face. Sakyamuni knew that Zhuowen had caused great trouble and was definitely going to die, but he was unwilling. Zhuowen's shadow in his heart could not be erased no matter what. Sakyamuni's conviction to become stronger became even stronger. After dealing with this matter, Sakyamuni prepared to go into seclusion again. He would not come out of seclusion until his cultivation reached the 3rd step of the Tao validation realm. Moreover, Ba Jingwei had asked Senki Yin for some dead flowers so that he could use them when he broke through. Sakyamuni believed that with those dead flowers and his Tao root that was about to surpass the heaven rank, it would be much easier for him to break through. Gao Yanghong was very efficient. He led Ba Jingwei and Sakyamuni to a hidden cave. This cave was very narrow and could only fit around one person. It was pitch black inside, and the occasional breeze that flowed out was even more chilly. Gao Yanghong explained that this cave was the entrance to the secret underground room. However, the energy of the Earth's core was extremely suppressive to cultivators, so it would be very strenuous for them to enter the secret underground room through this passageway. Ba Jingwei didn't mind, and he notified the 10th elder, Gu Hongkai, and the 8th elder, Mao Xinho. He intended to enter the secret underground room with them to capture Zhuowen. Gu Hongkai and Mao Xinho quickly arrived, and Ba Jingwei gave them a simple explanation of their objective. They were first surprised, and then they both expressed their willingness to enter the secret underground room with Ba Jingwei. After they reached an agreement, Gao Yanghong stood at the entrance of the cave and formed seals with his hands. An enormous amount of energy surged into the cave. He used his own cultivation to suppress the energy of the Earth's core within the passageway and reduce the threat of the energy to the lowest level. After Gao Yanghong finished, he gave Ba Jingwei a look. The latter nodded and led the other 2 elders into the passageway. Zhuowen slowly opened his eyes and looked at the withered primitive dead flower in his right palm. His eyes flickered. He had already stayed here for 2 days and absorbed 7 primitive dead man flowers. He had to admit that the primitive dead flower's essence energy was indeed very powerful. Zhuowen relied on the primitive dead flower's enormous essence energy to forcibly raise the level of his Pangu's sacred body to the peak of the 5-star level. Zhuowen's strength had also increased greatly. If his 5-star Pangu's sacred body could only be comparable to a late-stage Lord of Creation, his current strength was enough to fight against a half-step Lord of Creation. Of course, with the terrifying Pangu's sacred body and Zhuowen's terrifying self-healing ability, Zhuowen might not even be a match for an early-stage Lord of Creation, but it wouldn't be so easy for an early-stage Lord of Creation to kill him. At this moment, including the primitive dead man flower he had used earlier, Zhuowen had already used 8 primitive dead man flowers. He only had 1 primitive dead man flower left. Zhuowen didn't use the last primitive dead flower. He knew that if his Pangu's sacred body advanced from the peak of the 5-star level to the 6-star level, no matter how much energy it absorbed, it would be useless. He had to find new ancestral wizard venomous insects. Otherwise, it would be very difficult for his Pangu's sacred body to continue to advance. As for the last primitive dead man flower, Zhuowen tossed it to his main body to absorb. His original body's cultivation had already reached the peak of the Lord of Destiny. After absorbing the primitive dead flower, he should be able to break through to the Lord of Mystery. Zhuowen separated his original body and gave the last primitive dead flower to him. His original body naturally didn't refuse. After receiving the primitive dead flower, he frantically absorbed it. The aura in his body also rapidly increased. It was very fast, like an awakened beast. It made people's hearts palpitate. Ghost Plume, who had been left aside by Zhuowen, watched Zhuowen use up all the primitive dead flowers with his own eyes. He felt his heart ache. One had to know that Senki Yin had spent a lot of effort to cultivate these primitive dead flowers. Chapter 2887, Ghost Plume's Concealment Boom. A thunderous sound came from the quiet stone room. The aura of Yi Shiwen's original body was like an erupting volcano, becoming more and more terrifying. When it reached its peak, it exploded with a loud bang. Above Yi Shiwen's head, an extremely terrifying pressure of the way of heaven appeared. It was as if an unprecedentedly huge mountain had fallen and smashed onto Yi Shiwen's head. It was very shocking. Yi Shiwen's original body opened his eyes. His face was slightly pale, but his eyes were bursting with excitement. He could clearly feel that the power in his body was transforming, sublimating, and mutating. He knew that he was about to break through. The terrifying way of heaven turned into a terrifying storm. Then it turned into a substantial force that swept out. It revealed a series of shocking visions that completely enveloped Zhuowen. Zhuowen's doppelganger carried Ghost Plume and retreated to a corner of the stone room. He did not interfere with Yi Shiwen's breakthrough. After all, this kind of breakthrough was usually difficult to interfere with. Otherwise, it would lead to unpredictable consequences. Xiaohe, on the other hand, brought the blood immortal sword and death sacrifice sword to the doppelganger's side. She looked at Yi Shiwen's original body gravely. During the time when Zhuowen was absorbing the primordial dead flower and breaking through, Xiaohe and the other 2 had gained a lot. The 3 of them had taken almost all the precious materials around the stone room for their own use. Although their gains could not be compared to Zhuowen's, they had still gained a lot. Boom, 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 boom. The visions of the way of heaven became more and more terrifying. They all crushed Yi Shiwen's original body. Yi Shiwen's original body stood up with a cold gaze. He performed the tyrannical Dao slaughtering technique move by move. His entire body turned into a terrifying weapon. Like a war machine, He destroyed the visions one after another. Finally, the moment Zhuowen destroyed the last manifestation, the surrounding heavens might dissipated, and Zhuowen's entire body was covered in wounds, blood gushing out from his wounds. However, Yi Shiwen's original body's aura was much more powerful than before. He was like a peerless god of war, standing there with an unimaginably terrifying aura flowing out of him. I've finally become the Lord of Profound Secrets. What power! My original body's power is much stronger than the average Lord of Profound Secrets. I'm probably comparable to a Lord. Ghost Plume Studio, and Ghost Plume Studio, who was in the Doppelguard. Lord of Profound Death. Lord was Studio, Lord Studio, Lord Master Studio, Lord Studio. Lord was Lord Studio, Lord Studio. Ghost Plume stared at Zhuowen in disbelief. He really couldn't understand how this guy could be so powerful when he was just a master of profound death. Ghost Plume's expression was very complicated. He couldn't help but think of the ordinary wooden bow Zhuowen had used to defeat him. He had a feeling that this ordinary wooden bow had an extraordinary origin. When Zhuowen's divine arrow pierced through his body, he had sensed that it was just an ordinary god of creation arrow. In terms of power, it was slightly weaker than the average god of creation weapon. However, such an ordinary divine arrow had been able to pierce through his defensive divine weapon and his body. He had almost died on the spot. That wooden bow on this guy's body. Could it be that thing? Ghost Plume thought of something. His eyes were filled with shock, but more than that, confusion. This was because he had seen that thing tens of thousands of years ago. He silently compared it to Zhuowen's wooden bow and discovered that there was a huge difference between the two. Most importantly, the aura of Zhuowen's wooden bow was completely different from that thing. He wasn't too sure. After the main body broke through, it fused with the clone. Zhuowen's gaze fell on Ghost Plume. Ghost Plume felt his scalp go numb when he sensed Zhuowen's gaze. He actually didn't dare to meet Zhuowen's gaze. After experiencing Zhuowen's terror, Ghost Plume was both afraid and afraid of Zhuowen. Ghost Plume, I have something to ask of you. Zhuowen suddenly asked after a moment of silence. Ghost Plume lowered his head and said in a low voice, "What is it? Do you know if there are any other ways to leave this underground secret room other than the 2 destroyed transportation arrays?" Zhuowen lifted Ghost Plume's collar and looked straight at Ghost Plume. Ghost Plume's expression was very unnatural. He said in a low, muffled voice, "You also know that this underground secret room is completely sealed, other than the transportation array. There are basically no other ways to enter this underground secret room. Also, don't try in vain to think that you can leave the 10 Extremes in Corps sect through the underground secret room. This is because the sect master has already set up a terrifying, inescapable net around the underground secret room. If you try to leave through the underground secret room, you will easily trigger those restrictions and alarm the entire sect." Zhuowen was silent. He still looked at Ghost Plume and grinned. "Ghost Plume, I still can't trust you. I still trust myself more." Ghost Plume's eyes were filled with fear. He knew what Zhuowen was going to do. He hurriedly said, "Brother Zhuowen, don't be rash. I just remembered that there seems to be another passage in this underground secret room." Zhuowen's lips curled into a playful smile. He quietly looked at Ghost Plume as if he was looking at a clown. Ghost Plume could also see the meaning in Zhuowen's eyes, and a trace of humiliation flashed across his eyes. "Speak." Zhuowen casually threw Ghost Plume to the ground and said indifferently, due to Gui Ling's heavy injuries and the fact that his cultivation had been sealed by Zhuowen, Gui Ling was basically no different from a mortal. He did not even have the strength to truss up a chicken. Zhuowen was not worried that Guiling would try anything funny. Ghost Plume sighed in his heart and said, when this underground secret room was first built, there was a secret passage that led directly to this underground secret room. Furthermore, that passage is very deep and has the power of the Earth's core. Once a cultivator enters the passage, their strength will be greatly reduced. It will take at least 3 days to get out of that passage. Zhuowen's eyes darkened. He lifted Ghost Plume and threw him to the ground. He said coldly, "You didn't tell me such an important thing in advance? Were you secretly hoping that an expert from the sect would come through that passage to save you? Now, show me the entrance to that passage." Ghost Plume was dizzy from the fall, but he didn't dare to say anything. He hurriedly stood up and led the way for Zhuowen.